What happens when a billionaire father, drowning in his own emptiness, witnesses a mother's sacrifice that shatters everything he thought he knew about wealth? Tonight, I'm sharing a story that will break your heart and rebuild it. About Ethan Brooks, a man who had everything money could buy, and Mara Collins, a woman who had nothing but love to give. On one frozen Christmas Eve, their worlds collided in ways neither could predict. Stay with me until the very end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The wind cut through downtown Chicago like a blade made of ice, carrying with it the crystalline promise of snow that hadn't yet begun to fall. Christmas lights blinked in storefront windows, red, green, gold, casting cheerful reflections on sidewalks where hurried shoppers clutched bags filled with last-minute gifts. Laughter spilled from restaurants where families gathered, their voices warm and bright against the December cold. Somewhere in the distance, carolers sang about joy and peace and coming home. Ethan Brooks heard none of it. He sat motionless in the back corner booth of Mel's Diner, a place so ordinary it might as well have been invisible. The vinyl seat beneath him was cracked and patched with duct tape. The table wobbled when he set down his coffee cup. A neon sign buzzed intermittently above the door, its pink glow flickering like a dying heartbeat. This wasn't the kind of establishment where men like Ethan typically spent their evenings. Men like him, men whose signatures appeared on contracts worth hundreds of millions, whose names graced the plaques of hospital wings and university buildings, usually celebrated Christmas Eve at exclusive clubs or penthouse parties, surrounded by people who smiled too much and meant too little. But tonight, Ethan had needed to disappear. He'd left his tailored suit hanging in the closet of his Michigan Avenue high-rise. He'd removed the Patek Philippe watch that cost more than most people earned in a year. He'd pulled on jeans, actual jeans, not the designer kind, and a plain gray sweater that had been forgotten in the back of his closet for so long it smelled faintly of cedar and abandonment. Then he'd walked out into the cold without telling anyone where he was going because there was no one left to tell. His phone sat face down on the table, silent. 15 missed calls from Gerald, his chief operating officer, who couldn't understand why the CEO of Brooks Industries would go dark on Christmas Eve. 6 text messages from his sister in California, each one progressively more concerned. 1 voicemail from his attorney, reminding him about paperwork that needed signing before the new year. Not a single message from the person he wanted to hear from most. Ethan picked up his coffee, black, bitter, gone lukewarm, and stared into its murky depths as if they might hold answers to questions he was afraid to ask. When had he become this person? This hollow shell of a man who could negotiate billion-dollar mergers but couldn't remember the last time he'd had a conversation that mattered? Who could command boardrooms filled with the most powerful people in industry but couldn't find the words to tell his own daughter that he missed her? Nora. God, Nora, 17 years old now, living with her mother in Seattle. His beautiful, brilliant daughter who used to climb into his lap with picture books and sticky fingers, who used to believe her daddy could fix anything. She'd be celebrating Christmas tomorrow morning in a house that wasn't his, opening presents he'd selected through his assistant, probably not even wondering whether he was alone. The divorce had been finalized 3 years ago. Irreconcilable differences, the papers had said, which was just a polite way of saying he'd chosen work over family so many times that eventually there was no family left to choose. Catherine had gotten the house in Evanston, primary custody of Nora, and the satisfaction of being right about everything. He'd gotten the company, the penthouse, and a success so complete it felt like suffocation. He'd built an empire and lost a kingdom. The diner door chimed, letting in a gust of wind that carried the first snowflakes of the evening. Ethan didn't look up. He'd perfected the art of not looking up, of keeping his gaze carefully neutral, his expression blank. It was a survival skill he'd developed over years of avoiding eye contact with people who wanted something from him. Investors, journalists, former friends who only called when they needed money. But then he heard it. A small voice, bright as a bell, and full of hope, that hadn't yet learned to be afraid. "Mama, do we have enough? Can we get the soup and the sandwich?" Ethan's eyes lifted, drawn by something in that voice, an innocence so pure it hurt to hear. At a table near the front, barely 10 feet from where he sat in his self-imposed isolation, a young woman was kneeling beside a child who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. The little girl wore a pink coat that had been worn by at least two other children before her, its cuffs frayed and its zipper replaced with safety pins. Her hair was pulled back in two lopsided pigtails, and she clutched a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days, its left ear hanging by a thread. The woman, the mother, he assumed, was counting coins. Actually counting coins. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, sorting quarters from dimes, dimes from nickels, creating small stacks on the chipped formica table. She was younger than Ethan had initially thought, probably not yet 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that carried the kind of exhaustion that came from months, maybe years, of not sleeping enough. She wore a server's uniform under her thin jacket, black pants, white shirt, the name tag still pinned to her chest, though the restaurant's name had worn away. Her hands were red from cold and work, and there was a small bandage wrapped around her right thumb. "Let's see, baby," the woman said, and Ethan heard something in her voice that made his chest tighten. She was trying so hard to sound cheerful, to hide the worry that lined her face. "We've got $4.73. The little girl's face fell, just a fraction, before she forced it back into a smile that was far too brave for someone so young. "That's okay, Mama. We can share the soup. I'm not that hungry anyway." It was such an obvious lie. The child's eyes lingered on the plastic menu, on the pictures of grilled cheese sandwiches and chocolate milkshakes, with the kind of longing that no child should have to feel. But she smiled anyway, because she'd learned, somehow, somewhere, far too early, that her mother was already carrying too much weight. Ethan felt something crack inside his chest, a fissure, small but deep, in the wall he'd built around himself. He recognized that look on the child's face. He'd seen it before, in photographs from his own childhood, before the money came, before his father's tech startup had made them wealthy beyond imagining, before they'd moved from the cramped apartment in Queens to the mansion in Connecticut. He remembered being 7 years old, watching his mother count change to buy groceries, remembered pretending he wasn't hungry when there wasn't enough for everyone. He'd sworn he'd never be poor again. He'd worked himself to exhaustion, sacrificed everything, relationships, health, time with Nora, all in service of that vow. And he'd succeeded. He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. He could buy this entire diner, the building it occupied, the whole block if he wanted to. But this woman, counting coins with hands that trembled slightly from cold or worry, or both, had something he didn't. She had someone to share Christmas Eve with, someone who looked at her with pure, uncomplicated love, someone who mattered more than money. The mother was doing the math again, her lips moving silently. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and orthopedic shoes, approached with a notepad, her expression gentle. "Ready to order, hun?" The young mother looked up, and Ethan saw her swallow hard before speaking. Just one bowl of chicken soup, please. And could we get 2 spoons?" The waitress's eyes softened. She'd worked here long enough to recognize the sound of pride trying to hide desperation. "You know what? We've got a special tonight. Kids eat free. How about I bring your little one a grilled cheese, too? On the house." The mother's face flushed. "Oh, we couldn't. It's Christmas Eve, sweetheart. Even Santa takes a handout sometimes." The waitress winked at the little girl, who was staring up at her with wide eyes. "What do you say, princess? Grilled cheese sound good?" The child looked to her mother, waiting for permission. The mother's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. That's very kind. Thank you." As the waitress walked away, the young mother wrapped her arms around her daughter, pulling her close. "See?" she whispered. "There are still good people in the world, Lucy. Remember that, baby. Always remember that." Lucy. The little girl's name was Lucy. Ethan watched them, this woman and child holding each other in a diner that smelled of coffee and hope and hard times, and felt the loneliness that had been his constant companion for 3 years suddenly become unbearable. It wasn't enough anymore to sit in the shadows, to hide from the life he'd created. It wasn't enough to be successful and empty, powerful and alone. He didn't plan what happened next, didn't overthink it, analyze it, consider the implications. For the first time in years, Ethan Brooks did something that made absolutely no business sense whatsoever. He stood up. His legs carried him across the diner before his brain could talk him out of it. He stopped at their table, suddenly aware of how tall he was, how he might seem threatening to a woman who was clearly used to being on her guard. He shoved his hands in his pockets, trying to appear smaller, less imposing. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice came out rougher than intended. He cleared his throat. "I'm sorry to interrupt." The woman looked up sharply, her body language shifting instantly to protective. She placed herself slightly in front of her daughter, her shoulders squared despite her obvious exhaustion. "Yes?" Up close, Ethan could see details he'd missed from across the room, the shadows under her eyes, the small scar above her left eyebrow, the way her hands never stopped moving, one resting on her daughter's shoulder, the other clutching her thin jacket closed against the cold that had followed Ethan over from his booth. He realized he had no idea what to say. What was the protocol here? How did you approach a stranger and say, what? That watching them had made you realize how lonely you were. That their simple moment of love had shattered something inside you that you hadn't known was already broken? Ethan started, then stopped, started again. "I'm sitting over there by myself. It's Christmas Eve and I'd like some company. Would you and your daughter consider joining me?" The woman's eyes narrowed with suspicion. It was a look Ethan recognized. He'd seen it in enough business negotiations to know when someone thought they were being played. Why? It was a fair question, a smart question, a question that deserved a better answer than the truth, which was that Ethan didn't entirely know himself. "Because," he said slowly, choosing each word with care, "I've spent the last 3 hours sitting alone in that booth, and I just realized I don't want to spend another minute like that. Not tonight." The woman studied him with eyes that had learned to read people out of necessity. She was cataloging everything, his clothes, his shoes, the way he stood, the way he spoke, looking for danger, looking for lies, looking for whatever angle he was working, because in her experience, men who approached single mothers in diners always had an angle. "We're fine on our own," she said firmly. "Thank you anyway." She turned back to her daughter, conversation over, but Lucy was staring up at Ethan with the unfiltered curiosity of childhood. "Are you sad?" the little girl asked suddenly. "Lucy?" her mother said sharply. But Lucy wasn't finished. "You look like Mr. Henderson when his dog died. You have sad eyes." Out of the mouths of babes. Ethan felt a smile tugging at his lips despite everything, the first genuine smile he'd felt in weeks. "Yeah," he admitted, crouching down so he was at Lucy's eye level. "I guess I'm a little sad." "It's hard to be alone on Christmas, you know?" Lucy nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. "Mama says Christmas is for family. Do you have family?" "Lucy, that's enough," the mother said, but there was less edge in her voice now. She was watching Ethan carefully, reassessing. "I have a daughter," Ethan said quietly, still talking to Lucy but knowing the mother was listening. "She's a lot older than you. She's 17, but she lives far away, and I don't get to see her very much." "That's sad," Lucy pronounced. Then, with the simple logic of a 5-year-old solving the world's problems, "You should sit with us. Then nobody has to be alone." The mother closed her eyes briefly, and Ethan saw a flash of something cross her face. Resignation, maybe, or the particular exhaustion that comes from trying to teach a child to be cautious in a world that required it, while not crushing the kindness that came so naturally to them. "Please," Ethan added, speaking now to the mother. I don't want anything. I'd just like to share a meal, that's all." Their eyes met, and for a moment Ethan saw past the walls they'd both built. They were mirrors of each other, he realized, two people who'd learned to survive alone, who'd gotten so good at it they'd forgotten how to be anything else. Finally, the woman sighed. "One meal," she said, "and we keep our own table. You can pull a chair over if you want." It was a compromise, a way to let Lucy's kindness win without fully lowering her guard. Ethan would take it. "Thank you," he said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in months. He grabbed his coffee cup and moved to their table, pulling over a chair from an empty spot nearby. The waitress appeared almost immediately, her eyebrows raised in curiosity, but her expression welcoming. "Well, now, looks like we've got a party starting. Can I get you anything else, hun?" She directed the question at Ethan. "Coffee's fine for me, thanks. And whatever they're having, put it on my tab. In fact, he paused, glancing at Lucy, who was watching him with bright, hopeful eyes. Does this place have hot chocolate? The best in Chicago, the waitress declared proudly. Then hot chocolate for the young lady, with whipped cream, and, he looked at the mother, whatever you'd like. Please. The mother opened her mouth to protest, but the waitress was already nodding. Coming right up. And honey? She patted the mother's shoulder gently. Let the man buy you dinner. It's Christmas. After she left, an awkward silence settled over the table. Lucy swung her legs, too short to reach the floor, and clutched her battered rabbit. The mother kept her hands clasped together, her posture still defensive. Ethan realized he had no idea how to do this, how to just sit with people and be normal. He could negotiate with CEOs, give speeches to thousands, command a room with nothing but his presence. But making small talk with a 5-year-old and her guarded mother? He was completely out of his depth. I'm Ethan, he said finally, offering his hand across the table. The woman looked at it for a long moment before shaking it briefly. Her grip was firm despite her obvious fatigue. Mara, she said. Mara Collins, and this is Lucy. Hi, Lucy, Ethan said. I like your rabbit. Lucy immediately brightened, holding up the worn stuffed animal. This is Mr. Hopscotch. He's very old. He was Mama's when she was little. He looks very wise, Ethan said seriously. I bet he's been on a lot of adventures. So many. Lucy launched into an elaborate story about Mr. Hopscotch's various exploits, time travel, dragon battles. A particular incident involving a washing machine that Ethan gathered had not been an adventure so much as a laundry accident. But Lucy narrated it with such enthusiasm that both Ethan and Mara found themselves smiling despite the strangeness of the situation. As Lucy talked, Ethan watched Mara gradually relax, degree by degree. She was still wary. He could see it in the way she kept one hand near Lucy at all times, in the way her eyes flickered to the door periodically, tracking exits. But the rigid tension in her shoulders eased slightly, her hands unclenched. The food arrived, grilled cheese for Lucy, chicken soup for Mara, and because the waitress had apparently decided to adopt all of them, a slice of apple pie, to share. Lucy's hot chocolate came topped with a mountain of whipped cream and a cherry. Mama, look, it's got a cherry! Lucy bounced in her seat, her earlier hunger obvious now in the way she stared at her plate. What do you say? Mara prompted gently. Thank you. Lucy beamed at Ethan, then at the waitress's retreating back, then at the sandwich itself, as if it might appreciate the gratitude. You're very welcome, Ethan said, and discovered he meant it. When was the last time anyone had thanked him with such genuine joy? People thanked him all the time, employees, business partners, the charities that benefited from his mandatory corporate giving. But it always felt transactional, expected. This was different. This was pure delight from a child who had expected nothing and received something wonderful. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Lucy attacked her sandwich with the determination of someone making up for missed meals. Mara ate more slowly, methodically, making each bite count. Ethan found himself barely touching his coffee, too caught up in watching them, in the simple domesticity of a mother and daughter sharing a meal. So, Mara said finally, breaking the silence, what's a man like you doing alone in a place like this on Christmas Eve? A man like me? Ethan echoed. Mara's eyes flickered down to his hands, no calluses, nails neatly trimmed, then back to his face. You're not from around here. The way you talk, the way you carry yourself. You're used to nicer places than Mel's diner. She was perceptive. Ethan filed that away. Mara Collins was someone who'd learned to read people, probably out of necessity. I could ask you the same thing, he said carefully. What are you doing here? I work here, she said simply. Day shift, usually. But I picked up a double today because Christmas tips are better, just got off. She gestured to her uniform. Was going to head home, but Lucy said she was hungry, and I thought... She trailed off, looking at her daughter with such tenderness it made Ethan's chest ache. I thought we deserved a treat, just a small one. Everyone deserves a treat on Christmas, Ethan said quietly. Mara studied him again, and he had the uncomfortable feeling of being thoroughly x-rayed. You didn't answer my question. Why are you here? Fair enough. Ethan wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, needing something to hold on to. I was sitting in my apartment tonight, and I realized I didn't want to be there. Too quiet, too empty. So I started walking, and I ended up here. Big apartment? Mara asked, and there was something in her tone, not judgment exactly, but awareness. Too big, Ethan admitted. I live alone. My daughter, the one I mentioned, she's with her mother. They live in Seattle. I was supposed to fly out for Christmas, but there was a complication, a deal that needed closing. I told myself I'd go next week, but he stopped himself. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. It's okay, Mara said, and surprised him by sounding like she meant it. Sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers. Is that what we are? Ethan asked. Strangers? Lucy looked up from her sandwich, her mouth ringed with melted cheese. You're not strangers. Strangers don't share dinner. Mama told me that. Mara's lips quirked in what might have been the start of a smile. She's right. I did say that. She met Ethan's eyes. So I guess that makes us acquaintances? I'll take it, Ethan said, and found himself smiling back. They talked more easily after that. Mara told him about her job, 2 actually, the diner during the day, and a cleaning service 3 nights a week. She'd been doing it for 2 years, ever since her husband, she said the word with a careful neutrality that suggested complicated history, had left. She didn't elaborate, and Ethan didn't push. Lucy attended kindergarten at the public school 6 blocks from their apartment. She loved her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, and her best friend was a boy named Marcus who could burp the alphabet. She wanted a bicycle for Christmas, but knew it probably wasn't going to happen this year. Maybe next year, she said with the optimism of a child who still believed in eventually. Ethan, in turn, shared carefully edited versions of his own life. He worked in business, true enough. He traveled a lot, also true. He had a daughter he missed terribly, the truest thing he'd said all night. He left out the billions, the company, the penthouse, all the trappings that would have changed how Mara looked at him. For once, he wanted someone to see just him, just Ethan, not the empire. Do you like your job? Lucy asked suddenly, tilting her head with that bird-like curiosity children had. The question caught Ethan off guard. Did he like his job? I'm good at it, he said finally. That's not what I asked, Lucy pointed out with 5-year-old bluntness. Mama says just because you're good at something doesn't mean it makes you happy, like broccoli. I'm good at eating it, but I don't like it. Mara's cheeks flushed. Lucy, you don't need to interrogate the nice man. But Ethan was laughing, actually laughing, a real sound that came from somewhere deep in his chest, somewhere he'd forgotten existed. No, she's absolutely right. And honestly, Lucy, I don't know anymore. Maybe I used to. It's been a long time since I thought about it. You should think about it, Lucy said seriously. Life's too short to do things that don't make you happy. That's what Mama always says. Ethan looked at Mara, who was studying her soup like it held the secrets of the universe. Your mom sounds very wise. She is, Lucy agreed. She knows everything, except how to fix our heater. She doesn't know that one. Lucy, Mara said again, but there was resignation in her voice now. It's true, Mama. It's been broken for 2 weeks, and we've been sleeping with all our clothes on, and that's enough, baby. Mara's voice was gentle but firm. She looked at Ethan, and he saw mortification in her eyes. I'm sorry, she doesn't have much of a filter. Don't apologize, Ethan said quietly. She's wonderful. He meant it. Lucy was like a beam of light in the darkness, pure and bright and completely herself, undiminished by the hardships Ethan could see in Mara's face, in the worn clothes, in the carefully counted coins still sitting in a small pile on the table. They stayed at the table longer than any of them had planned. Lucy eventually finished her hot chocolate and started nodding off against her mother's side. Mr. Hopscotch clutched in her arms. Mara tried to gather their things, but Ethan found himself not wanting the night to end. Wait, he said, then paused, unsure of what he wanted to ask. Do you need a ride somewhere? It's cold out, and it's starting to snow. Mara's walls came back up instantly. We're fine. The bus stop is just... There are no buses running this late on Christmas Eve, Ethan said gently. Trust me, I checked before I came out. How far is your apartment? Mara hesitated, and Ethan could see her weighing options, calculating risks. About a mile. We walk it all the time. In the snow? With a sleeping 5-year-old? We've done it before, Mara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Ethan reached for his wallet, but Mara held up a hand. I can't take money from you. I wasn't offering money. I was going to call a car, please. Let me do this one thing, and then I'll disappear back to my too big apartment, and you'll never have to see me again. He saw the exact moment she decided to accept. Not because she wanted to, but because Lucy was getting heavier against her side, and the snow outside was falling faster now, and pride only kept you warm for so long. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Ethan called for a car, not his usual driver, not the company car, but a simple rideshare that wouldn't raise questions. While they waited, he paid the bill, leaving a tip that would have made the waitress cry if she'd seen it before they left. She'd been kind to Mara and Lucy. That deserved more than spare change. The car arrived, a clean sedan with a driver who looked half asleep but friendly. Ethan held the door while Mara settled Lucy in the back seat, buckling her in with practiced efficiency. The little girl barely stirred, exhausted from the day and the unexpected feast. Thank you, Mara said again, standing on the sidewalk with snow catching in her dark hair. For everything, for the meal, for the company, for, she gestured vaguely, for not being weird about it. Ethan smiled. Well, the night's not over yet. I could still get weird. She actually laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her. Please don't. This was nice, unexpectedly nice. Yeah, Ethan agreed. It was. They stood there in the snow for a moment, two strangers who were no longer quite strangers, not knowing how to end this strange, sweet interlude. Finally, Mara held out her hand. Merry Christmas, Ethan. He shook it, her cold fingers small in his. Merry Christmas, Mara. She started to get in the car, then paused. Will you be okay? Getting home? The question surprised him. When was the last time anyone had asked him that? Yeah, I'll be fine, she nodded, still hesitant. Then, impulsively, she pulled a pen from her purse and grabbed a napkin from her pocket, one the waitress had given her earlier. She scribbled something quickly and handed it to him. Just in case, she said. You know, if you ever want to talk, to an acquaintance. It was a phone number. Ethan stared at this small piece of paper that felt like a lifeline thrown across dark water. Thank you, he managed. Mara got in the car, and Ethan stepped back as it pulled away from the curb. He watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner, until there was nothing left but snow and silence and the napkin in his hand. He stood there on the empty street for a long time, long after the cold had seeped through his jeans, long after his fingers had gone numb. The snow fell heavier now, blanketing the city in white, muffling the sounds of distant traffic and faraway music. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan Brooks felt something other than empty. He felt hope. The walk back to his building took 40 minutes through the snow, but Ethan didn't call for a car. He needed the cold, needed the bite of wind against his face, needed to feel something real after so long feeling nothing. His building doorman looked surprised to see him arrive on foot, covered in snow, but Ethan just waved and headed for the elevator. In his penthouse, his too big, too empty penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city full of people celebrating together, Ethan carefully smoothed out the napkin and placed it on his kitchen counter. Just a phone number, scrawled in blue ink, slightly smudged where the snow had touched it. He picked up his phone, scrolling past Gerald's increasingly frantic messages, past his sister's worried texts, until he found what he was looking for, Nora's contact. His thumb hovered over the call button, then moved to text instead. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. I love you. I'm sorry I'm not there. He hit send before he could overthink it, then set the phone down and stared at the napkin again. Just in case you want to talk, to an acquaintance. Ethan smiled. For the first time in a long time, he went to bed feeling like maybe, just maybe, tomorrow wouldn't be quite so lonely after all. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white, turning Chicago into something magical and new. And in a small apartment a mile away, Mara Collins tucked her daughter into bed, kissed her forehead, and wondered about the sad man with kind eyes who had shared their Christmas Eve dinner. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was only the beginning. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of silence that only fresh snow could bring. Ethan woke to find Chicago transformed. The harsh edges of the city softened under a blanket of white, the morning light reflecting off a million crystals until everything seemed to glow. He stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows with a cup of coffee he didn't remember making, staring out at a world that looked different somehow, though he couldn't say exactly why. His phone buzzed, a text from Nora, sent at 2 in the morning, Seattle time. "Love you too, Dad. Mom says you can video call at noon if you want. We're doing presents then." Ethan's chest tightened. She'd added a heart emoji, small, pink, so casual it hurt. When had his relationship with his daughter become something that required scheduling? When had he become someone she had to make time for, rather than someone who was simply there? He texted back immediately. "I'd like that very much. Thank you." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Cool. See you then." "Cool. See you then." The casual distance in those words was entirely his fault, and Ethan knew it. He'd missed her 12th birthday because of a merger in Frankfurt, her 8th grade graduation because of an investor meeting in Tokyo, her first heartbreak because he'd been too busy building an empire to notice his daughter was falling apart. Catherine had been the one to hold Nora while she cried. Catherine had been the one to take her for ice cream and let her talk about the boy who'd broken her heart. Ethan had sent flowers 3 days late, along with a card his assistant had written. He looked down at the napkin still sitting on his kitchen counter. In the morning light, Mara's phone number seemed almost to mock him. What had he been thinking? That he could somehow fix his loneliness by inserting himself into the lives of strangers? That a single shared meal could fill the void he'd spent 3 years creating? But even as he thought it, he remembered Lucy's bright eyes, her easy laughter, the way Mara had slowly lowered her walls, degree by painful degree, the feeling of being seen as just Ethan, not Ethan Brooks of Brooks Industries, not the billionaire CEO, not the absentee father, just a man, lonely and flawed and trying. He picked up the napkin, turned it over in his hands. Then, before he could talk himself out of it, he saved the number in his phone. Not under Mara's name. That felt too presumptuous, too familiar. Just Mel's Diner with a Christmas tree emoji. Something to remind him of the night, but innocuous enough that if anyone saw it, they wouldn't ask questions. The day stretched ahead of him, empty and waiting. He could work. There were always emails, always reports, always something demanding his attention. He could go to the gym in his building, run on the treadmill while staring at a wall until his body hurt enough to quiet his mind. He could do what he'd done every Christmas for the past 3 years. Pretend it was just another day, ignore the weight of all the traditions he'd abandoned, drink expensive scotch alone while the city celebrated around him. Or he could do something different. Ethan found himself in his walk-in closet, staring at rows of suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. At the back, pushed behind the Armani and the Tom Ford, he found what he was looking for. A box he hadn't opened in years. Inside were the things Catherine had sent him after the divorce. The items from Nora's childhood that had been in his home office, crayon drawings of stick figure families, a Father's Day card made from construction paper and glitter, a photograph of Nora at 3 years old, sitting on his shoulders at the beach, both of them laughing at something long forgotten. He sat on the closet floor, on carpet that cost $300 per square foot, and let himself remember when he'd been a different kind of father. When Nora would wait for him by the door, would shriek, "Daddy's home!" and launch herself into his arms regardless of whether his suit got wrinkled or his tie got pulled. When bedtime meant reading stories, not checking emails. When weekends meant parks and playgrounds, not conference calls and client dinners. When had he lost that? Not all at once. It had been gradual, insidious. One missed dinner, one canceled trip, one broken promise that led to another, then another, until the promises stopped meaning anything and Nora stopped expecting him to keep them. His phone alarm chimed. 11:45. 15 minutes until the video call. Ethan carefully repacked the box, pushed it back into its corner, and went to make himself presentable. He changed into a casual sweater, the kind of thing a normal dad might wear on Christmas morning, and positioned himself in front of a neutral wall, making sure nothing in the background screamed, "I live in a penthouse that costs more than your house." At exactly noon, he called. Catherine answered, her face appearing on screen with the kind of polite smile she reserved for business associates and distant relatives. She was 42 now, still beautiful in that effortless way that had first attracted him 20 years ago. She wore a red sweater and pearl earrings, her blonde hair shorter than he remembered. "Ethan, Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Catherine. You look well." "Thank you." "Hold on, I'll get Nora." She turned away from the camera, calling, "Sweetheart, your father's on the phone." Your father, not dad. Not even your dad. Just your father, formal and distant, the title of a role rather than a relationship. Nora appeared on screen, and Ethan's heart clenched. She looked so much older than the last time he'd seen her in person, which had been when? August? No, July, 5 months ago. She'd grown her hair long, past her shoulders, and she wore makeup now, subtle, but there. When had she learned to do that? "Hey, Dad?" "Hey, sweetheart. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas." She settled onto what looked like a couch, tucking her legs under her. Behind her, Ethan could see a Christmas tree decorated with lights and ornaments, stockings hanging from a mantel. The life he wasn't part of. "Did you have a good morning? Open any presents yet?" "Yeah, some. Mom said we should wait for you to call before doing the rest." Nora glanced off screen, probably at Catherine. "We got a lot of stuff." "That's great. I'm glad." Silence stretched between them, awkward and painful. There was a time when they could talk for hours about everything and nothing. Now Ethan searched desperately for topics, for questions that wouldn't make him sound like a stranger interrogating his own daughter. "How's school?" "Fine." "Still doing debate club?" "Yeah." "That's good. That's really good." More silence. Nora picked at a thread on her sweater, not quite meeting his eyes through the camera. "Listen, sweetheart, I know I said I'd come out this week, but something came up at work and it's fine." Nora's voice was flat, practiced. She'd heard this speech before. "I get it. I'll make it up to you. Maybe spring break. We could go somewhere, just the two of us. Anywhere you want." Nora's eyes finally met his, and Ethan saw something in them that made him want to reach through the screen and pull her into a hug he had no right to give. She didn't believe him. Why would she? He'd made this promise before, dozens of times. Sometimes he'd even meant it, but something always came up. Something always took priority. "Sure, Dad, that sounds nice." "I mean it this time." "I know." But she didn't. That was clear in every line of her body, in the way she'd already started to pull away emotionally, protecting herself from the disappointment she knew was coming. Catherine appeared behind Nora, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Why don't you show your father what Grandma sent?" Nora brightened a little, reaching for something off screen. She held up a book, a thick hardcover about marine biology. "Grandma knows I want to study oceanography. This has all the latest research." Ethan felt like he'd been punched. His daughter wanted to study oceanography? Since when? How had he not known this? "That's wonderful, honey. I didn't know you were interested in that." "Yeah, well," Nora shrugged, "there's a lot you don't know." She said it without malice, just stating a fact, which somehow made it worse. They talked for another 10 minutes, Catherine occasionally interjecting with prompts, Nora answering his questions with increasing monosyllables, Ethan running out of things to say that didn't make him sound like exactly what he was, a father who'd let work become more important than his child. When they finally said goodbye, Nora claiming she needed to help with dinner, though Ethan suspected she just wanted an excuse to leave, he sat staring at his blank phone screen for a long time. There's a lot you don't know. She was right. He didn't know his own daughter. Didn't know her dreams, her fears, what made her laugh, or what kept her up at night. He traded presents for presents, time for money, and now he had a 17-year-old stranger who called him Dad out of obligation rather than affection. Ethan stood abruptly, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. He couldn't sit in this apartment another minute, couldn't stand the silence, the emptiness, the crushing weight of his own choices. He found himself walking with no destination in mind, just moving through the snow-covered streets while Chicago celebrated around him. Families bundled up against the cold, heading to relatives' houses with wrapped presents and covered dishes. Couples walking hand in hand, stopping to kiss under streetlights. Even the homeless man on the corner of State and Madison was singing carols. his voice surprisingly beautiful, a cup of coffee steaming beside his cardboard sign. Ethan walked for an hour, maybe two, until his feet led him somewhere he hadn't consciously decided to go. Mel's Diner. The same neon sign flickered in the window. Through the glass, he could see it was busier than last night. Families crowded into booths, the waitresses moving efficiently between tables, someone's kid crying over spilled orange juice. It looked warm. It looked alive. It looked like everything his penthouse wasn't. He almost turned around. What was he doing? Mara would probably think he was stalking her. She'd specifically said she worked day shifts and it was Christmas. She wouldn't be here. This was stupid. This was Ethan? He spun around. Mara stood behind him on the sidewalk, Lucy's hand in hers. They both wore the same coats as last night, and Lucy had on pink boots that were slightly too big, probably hand-me-downs. But they were smiling, at least Lucy was. Mara looked surprised, maybe a little wary. "Hi," Ethan said, suddenly feeling like an idiot. I was walking, and I ended up here. I didn't expect to see you." "We live close," Mara said carefully. "We were heading to the community center. They're doing Christmas dinner for the neighborhood." "Mr. Ethan!" Lucy had apparently decided she knew him well enough for the familiar address. She let go of her mother's hand and bounded over to him. "Did you have a good Christmas? Did you talk to your daughter?" "I did, actually. Thank you for asking." "Was she happy?" The question, so simple and direct, hit him harder than it should have. I hope so." Lucy studied him with those too perceptive eyes. "You still look sad." "Lucy," Mara said, but without heat. She'd apparently given up trying to curb her daughter's brutal honesty. "Sorry," Lucy said, not sounding sorry at all. "Mama says I need to work on my filter." "Your filter is fine," Ethan assured her. "And you're right, I am a little sad." "Do you want to come to dinner with us?" Lucy asked impulsively. "There's going to be turkey and pie and everything. Mrs. Chen makes the best pie. It's free, so you don't have to pay anything." "Lucy, I'm sure Ethan has plans." "I don't," Ethan said quickly, too quickly. He saw Mara's expression shift from surprise to understanding to something that might have been pity, which he hated. "I mean, I don't have plans, but I don't want to intrude on your Christmas." Mara looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan had the sense of being thoroughly evaluated. She was trying to figure him out, this man who'd appeared twice now, at moments when she and her daughter were struggling. Was he genuine? Was he dangerous? Was he lonely enough to be pathetic, or just lonely enough to be human? "It's a community dinner," she said finally. "Anyone can come. If you want to join us, you're welcome." It wasn't exactly warm, but it wasn't a rejection either. Ethan would take it. "I'd like that." "Thank you." Lucy immediately grabbed his hand, her small fingers cold even through her worn gloves. "Come on. If we're late, all the good seats will be taken." She tugged him down the sidewalk, chattering about Mrs. Chen's pie and how last year there had been a man dressed as Santa, and maybe he'd be there again. Mara followed a few steps behind, and when Ethan glanced back at her, she had an expression he couldn't quite read. The community center was a low brick building that had seen better decades. Inside it was warm and loud and chaotic in the best possible way. Long tables had been set up end to end, covered with paper tablecloths decorated with hand-drawn Christmas trees and snowmen. Families filled the chairs, kids running between tables while harried parents tried to corral them. Volunteers moved through the crowd with platters of food, and someone had set up speakers in the corner playing slightly scratchy Christmas music. It was nothing like the elegant holiday parties Ethan usually attended, the ones with ice sculptures and champagne fountains and caterers in white gloves. This was messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. "Mara, you made it!" A small Asian woman emerged from the kitchen area, wiping her hands on an apron. She had gray hair pulled back in a bun, and the kind of smile that made you feel like you'd known her all your life. "This must be Mrs. Chen." "We wouldn't miss it," Mara said, and Ethan heard genuine warmth in her voice. "Mrs. Chen, this is Ethan. He's joining us for dinner." Mrs. Chen's eyes went sharp behind her glasses, assessing him in about 3 seconds. "Any friend of Mara's is welcome. You help set the table, young man? We're running a little behind." "Of course," Ethan said, because apparently this was his life now, setting tables in a community center with paper plates and plastic forks. Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly and disappeared back into the kitchen. Lucy had already run off to join a group of kids near the Christmas tree in the corner. That left Ethan and Mara standing somewhat awkwardly in the middle of the room. "You don't have to do this," Mara said quietly. "If you want to leave, it's okay. Lucy will understand." "I don't want to leave." Ethan surprised himself with how much he meant it. "Unless you want me to?" Mara studied him again with those careful eyes. "No," she said finally. "You can stay." She paused, then added, "But if you're staying, you're helping. We don't have spectators here." "Fair enough. Put me to work." She did. For the next hour, Ethan found himself doing things he couldn't remember ever doing. Arranging plates and napkins, filling water pitchers, helping an elderly man named Frank carry folding chairs from the storage closet. He carried trays of food from the kitchen, made small talk with people whose names he'd forget by tomorrow, and helped a teenager fix the sound system when it started cutting out. No one recognized him. No one asked what he did for a living, or where he lived, or whether he'd read the latest market reports. They just accepted him as Mara's friend, which apparently was credential enough. He was just Ethan, another volunteer helping to make Christmas special for people who didn't have anywhere else to go. And it felt good. Better than good. It felt real in a way nothing had felt real in years. Finally, everyone was called to sit. Ethan found himself at a table with Mara, Lucy, Mrs. Chen, Frank, and a young couple with twin babies who couldn't have been more than 6 months old. The table was crowded, elbows bumping, glasses nearly spilling every time someone reached for the rolls. It was chaos. It was perfect. The food was simple but delicious. Turkey that was slightly dry but nobody complained, mashed potatoes with lumps, green beans that came from a can, and yes, Mrs. Chen's famous pie, which turned out to be worth every bit of Lucy's enthusiasm. Ethan ate more than he had in months, not because the food was exceptional, but because it was shared. Because Lucy kept stealing bites from his plate when she thought he wasn't looking, and because Mara was laughing, actually laughing, at something Frank was saying about his days in the Navy. He watched Mara come alive in ways he hadn't seen last night. Here, surrounded by people she knew and trusted, her walls came down. She joked with Mrs. Chen about a disaster involving Christmas cookies. She helped the young mother wrangle one of the twins when he started fussing. She was relaxed, present, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with physical appearance and everything to do with being genuinely at home in her own skin. "So, Ethan," Frank said, pointing a fork at him, "how do you know our Mara?" Our Mara. Like she belonged to this community, was claimed by them. Ethan wondered what that felt like, to be claimed by people who chose to care about you. "We met last night," Ethan said, "at the diner." "Last night?" Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose. "And already you're at Christmas dinner? That's fast work." Mara's cheeks colored. "It's not like that, Mrs. Chen. We happened to run into each other again today." "Mm-hmm." Mrs. Chen looked thoroughly unconvinced, but mercifully changed the subject. "You have family in Chicago, Ethan?" "My daughter lives in Seattle," Ethan said, "with her mother." "Ah." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "That's hard, being apart on holidays." "Yeah." Ethan found himself continuing, surprising himself. "I talked to her this morning. It was difficult. I don't think she's very happy with me right now." "Teenagers are tough," Frank offered. "I raised 3. Thought each one of them hated me at some point, but they came around eventually." "How did you do it?" Ethan asked. "Make them come around?" Frank shrugged. "Showed up? Even when they didn't want me to, even when I didn't know what to say, I showed up. Eventually they realized I wasn't going anywhere." Showed up. Such simple advice. Such impossible advice for a man who'd built his entire life around being everywhere, except where he was needed most. After dinner, Lucy dragged Ethan over to the kids' area, where volunteers had set up games and activities. She insisted he help her build a gingerbread house with graham crackers and frosting, though build was generous. It mostly involved Lucy eating the candy decorations and Ethan trying to keep the walls from collapsing. "You're not very good at this," Lucy informed him seriously. "No," Ethan agreed, watching their creation lean dangerously to the left. I'm really not. That's okay. Mama says the point isn't to be good at stuff. The point is to have fun trying. Lucy stuck a gumdrop on the roof, which immediately slid off. She giggled. See? Fun! Ethan found himself laughing too, this time without any of the surprise he'd felt last night. It came easier now, more naturally. From across the room, he could see Mara watching them. She was helping clean up, stacking plates and wiping tables, but her eyes kept drifting to where her daughter was laughing with a man she barely knew. Ethan couldn't read her expression. It was something between cautious and curious, guarded and hopeful. When the gingerbread house finally collapsed completely, Lucy declared it perfect anyway and ran off to show her friends. That left Ethan standing awkwardly in the middle of the children's area, covered in frosting and feeling more content than he had in years. He made his way over to where Mara was folding tablecloths. Need help? She looked up and he saw a smile tugging at her lips. You have frosting on your face. I do? Right there. She reached up without thinking, her thumb brushing the corner of his mouth. The touch lasted maybe a second, but Ethan felt it like electricity. Mara must have too, because she pulled her hand back quickly, her cheeks flushing. Sorry, It's fine, Ethan said, though his heart was beating faster than it should. Thank you. They stood there for a moment, the noise of the community center fading into background static. Ethan was acutely aware of how close she was, of the faint scent of her shampoo, of the way a strand of hair had escaped her ponytail and curled against her neck. Why are you really here? Mara asked suddenly. What do you mean? I mean, she gestured vaguely. Yesterday, I thought maybe you were just lonely, someone passing through. But you came back. You're here, helping clean up a community center in a neighborhood I'm guessing you don't live in. So why? What do you want? It was a fair question, a smart question, and Ethan found he didn't have a good answer, or rather he had too many answers, and none of them made sense. I don't know, he said honestly. I woke up this morning in my apartment, and I talked to my daughter who barely knows me anymore, and I realized I couldn't spend another day being that person. The person who has everything and feels nothing. And then I started walking, and I ended up at the diner, and you were there, and I thought... He trailed off. I thought maybe I could be different, just for one day. Mara studied him with those careful, perceptive eyes. You're running from something. Maybe. Or running towards something. I'm not sure which. That's not an answer. I know. Ethan met her gaze directly. I know I must seem strange to you. Random guy who appears out of nowhere, buys you dinner, shows up at your Christmas. I know how that looks. And I know you have every reason to be suspicious. But I promise you, I'm not trying to... I don't have an agenda here. I just wanted to spend time with people who didn't know me, who didn't want anything from me. Is that okay? Mara was quiet for a long moment. Then finally she nodded. Yeah, it's okay. She went back to folding tablecloths, but there was less tension in her shoulders now. You did good work today, by the way. Mrs. Chen was impressed. She doesn't impress easily. High praise. The highest. Mara smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. She'll probably try to recruit you to volunteer regularly now. Fair warning. Would that be so bad? The question hung between them, meaning more than the words suggested. Mara looked at him, really looked at him, and Ethan saw the moment she decided to take a small leap of faith. No, she said quietly. I don't think it would be bad at all. They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, working side by side while Lucy played with the other children and Mrs. Chen directed operations with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. As the evening wound down, families started leaving, bundling up against the cold, calling out goodbyes and promises to see each other soon. Mara collected Lucy, who was nearly asleep on her feet despite her protests that she wasn't tired. Ethan helped her into her coat, then held the door as they headed out into the night. The snow had stopped, leaving Chicago blanketed in white under a clear, star-filled sky. It was beautiful in the way only winter nights could be, cold and clean, and somehow hopeful. Can we walk you home? Ethan asked. Make sure you get there safely? Mara hesitated, then nodded. Okay, it's just a few blocks. They walked slowly through the quiet streets, Lucy between them holding both their hands. She chattered sleepily about the gingerbread house, and Mrs. Chen's pie, and how she hoped Santa had found their apartment even though they hadn't left cookies this year. Santa doesn't need cookies, Mara said gently. He knows you're a good girl. But it's nice to leave them, Lucy insisted. Mama, can we leave cookies next year, even if they're just the cheap ones from the store? We'll see, baby. See? They reached a building that had probably been nice in the 1970s, but now showed its age in cracked concrete and peeling paint. Mara led them through a door that required some force to open, up 3 flights of stairs that smelled of old carpet and other people's cooking, to apartment 3C. The door was decorated with a construction paper wreath Lucy had clearly made, complete with her name written in careful kindergarten letters. Well, Mara said, fishing for her keys, this is us. Thank you, Ethan said. For today. For letting me be part of your Christmas. Thank you for the company. Mara unlocked the door, then paused. Behind her, Ethan could see a small living room with second-hand furniture and a tree made from coat hangers wrapped in green yarn. It was sparse but clean, decorated with the kind of care that couldn't be bought. Ethan, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to disappear now? Go back to wherever you came from and forget about all this? The question surprised him with its directness. But then again, Mara didn't seem like someone who wasted time on games. She needed to know where she stood, probably for Lucy's sake as much as her own. Do you want me to? Ethan asked. I asked first. Fair enough. Ethan looked at Lucy, nearly asleep against her mother's leg, then back at Mara. No, I don't want to disappear. If it's okay with you, I'd like to see you both again. Maybe grab coffee sometime, or dinner, just as friends, he added quickly, seeing her eyes widen slightly. I'm not trying to, I just meant… Coffee sounds nice, Mara said, cutting off his rambling. Lucy goes to daycare on weekdays. I have Tuesday afternoon free if you do. Tuesday, 3 days from now. Not too soon, not too far. Ethan felt something in his chest loosen, something that had been clenched tight for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Tuesday works perfectly. There's a coffee shop on Western, near the school, Annie's. Do you know it? I'll find it. What time? 2 o'clock? I'll be there. They stood there for another moment, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Finally, Lucy yawned hugely, breaking the spell. I should get her to bed, Mara said. Of course. Good night, Lucy. Lucy stirred enough to wave sleepily. Night, Mr. Ethan. Thanks for being sad with us. Ethan laughed. Thanks for being not sad with me. After they'd gone inside and he heard the locks click into place, Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, staring at the construction paper wreath. Then he headed back down the stairs, out into the cold night, and started the long walk back to his building. His phone buzzed. A text from Gerald. Where are you? The Singapore deal is falling apart and I can't reach you. Ethan looked at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back. Handle it. That's what I pay you for. I'm unavailable until the 27th. The response was immediate. What? But Ethan had already silenced his phone and shoved it in his pocket. For the first time in his professional life, he was choosing something, someone, over work. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. When he finally reached his building, the doorman greeted him with barely concealed curiosity about his disheveled, frosting-stained appearance. But Ethan just smiled and headed up to his penthouse. He didn't turn on the lights, just stood at the windows, looking out at the city while Chicago slept beneath its blanket of snow. Somewhere out there, a few miles away, Mara was tucking Lucy into bed, reading her a story maybe, or singing her a lullaby, doing all the ordinary, beautiful things that parents did when they were present, when they chose to be there. Ethan pulled out his phone and opened his photos. There was Nora at 3, covered in sand at the beach. Nora at 7, missing her front teeth. Nora at 10, at her school science fair, holding a blue ribbon and beaming. When had he stopped taking pictures? When had he stopped being someone worth remembering? He opened a new message to Nora. I've been thinking about what you said today. You're right. There's a lot I don't know. I'd like to change that, if you'll let me. I love you, sweetheart. Always have, even when I didn't show it well. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he looked at the napkin. Still on his counter, the ink slightly faded, but the numbers still clear. Mel's Diner. A random meeting, a shared meal, a little girl asking if they could afford soup. Sometimes, Ethan thought, your whole life could change in the space between one moment and the next. Sometimes you looked up from your loneliness and saw someone else drowning in theirs. And you reached out your hand without thinking, without planning, without knowing that in saving them, you might save yourself. He didn't know what Tuesday would bring. Didn't know if whatever this was with Mara and Lucy could be sustained beyond the magic of Christmas, when real life came rushing back. Didn't know if he was capable of being the kind of man they might need him to be. But for the first time in 3 years, Ethan Brooks wanted to find out. And wanting, he was discovering, was a kind of hope all its own. Outside his window, the city glittered with a million lights, each one a story, each one a life being lived. Tomorrow he would wake up different. Tomorrow he would try to be better. Tonight he simply stood in the darkness and let himself feel. The fear and the hope, the loneliness and the possibility, all of it tangled together in his chest like a knot he couldn't untie. But maybe that was okay. Maybe not everything needed to be solved. Maybe some things just needed to be felt, fully and completely, until they changed you into someone who could do more than just survive. Someone who could live. Tuesday arrived wrapped in the kind of gray cold that made Chicago feel smaller, darker. Ethan had spent the previous 2 days in a state he could only describe as restless anticipation. He'd worked, or tried to. Gerald had sent him approximately 74 emails about the Singapore deal, each one more frantic than the last. Ethan had responded to exactly 3 of them, each response shorter than the one before, until finally Gerald seemed to understand that whatever crisis was unfolding would have to unfold without him. His sister had called too, her voice bright with forced cheer, asking how his Christmas had been. Ethan had surprised them both by telling her the truth, that he'd spent it with strangers who'd become something more than that he'd helped serve dinner at a community center, that he'd felt more alive in 2 days than he had in 3 years. There had been a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, "Ethan, are you okay? Do you need me to fly out there?" "I'm fine, Sarah. Better than fine, actually. I'm just trying something different." Different like therapy different? Or different like midlife crisis different? He'd laughed. "Maybe both. I'll let you know." Now standing outside Annie's coffee shop at 1:55, Ethan felt nerves he hadn't experienced since his first board meeting as CEO. His palms were sweating despite the cold. He'd changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on jeans and a navy sweater that Catherine had bought him years ago, and he'd never worn because it seemed too casual for someone in his position. But he wasn't here as CEO of Brooks Industries. He was just Ethan, meeting a friend for coffee. A friend. Was that what Mara was? Could you call someone a friend after 2 encounters and a handful of hours? Ethan wasn't sure, but he liked the word anyway. Liked the simplicity of it, the lack of complication. He checked his watch. 1:57. Took a breath. Pushed open the door. Annie's was exactly the kind of place he'd normally never notice. Small, slightly cramped, with mismatched furniture and local art covering the walls. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled behind a counter covered in pastries. It smelled like coffee and cinnamon, and the kind of comfort that couldn't be manufactured. Mara was already there, tucked into a corner table with a mug cupped between her hands. She'd dressed up slightly, or what Ethan assumed was her version of dressing up. Dark jeans instead of her server uniform, a green sweater that brought out flecks of color in her hazel eyes, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked younger like this, less guarded. She saw him and offered a small wave. Ethan felt his nervousness ease slightly as he made his way over. "Hi," he said, suddenly feeling awkward. Should he hug her, shake her hand, just sit down? "Hi." Mara solved the problem by staying seated, gesturing to the chair across from her. "You found it okay?" "Yeah, no problem." Ethan sat, draping his coat over the back of the chair. "Have you been waiting long?" "Just a few minutes. I ordered already. I hope that's okay. I only have about an hour before I need to pick up Lucy." "Of course. Let me get something." He started to stand, but Mara held up a hand. "I got you a coffee. Black, right? That's what you were drinking at the diner." She'd noticed. She'd paid attention and remembered. Something about that simple observation made Ethan's chest feel tight. "Thank you." That's perfect. A barista appeared with a second mug, setting it in front of Ethan along with a small pitcher of cream and some sugar packets, just in case. He thanked her and wrapped his hands around the cup, grateful for something to do with them. For a moment, they both sipped their coffee in silence. It wasn't quite comfortable yet. There was too much unknown between them for that. But it wasn't painful either. It was the silence of two people trying to figure out how to be around each other outside the context that had brought them together. So, Mara said finally, I have to admit, I wasn't sure you'd actually show up. Why not? She shrugged, but there was something careful in the gesture. People say things. They mean them in the moment, maybe, but then real life comes back and they forget. I didn't think you'd forget exactly, just that you'd reconsider. I almost did, Ethan admitted. Honesty seemed important with Mara. She had a bullshit detector that was clearly well calibrated. I woke up this morning and thought about all the reasons this was strange. Meeting for coffee with someone I barely know, someone from a completely different world than mine. It would be easier to just let it go, move on. But you came anyway. But I came anyway. He met her eyes. I wanted to see you again. Mara's cheeks colored slightly, and she looked down at her coffee. Lucy's been asking about you every day since Christmas. When can we see Mr. Ethan again? Do you think he likes me? Does he have a nice house? I finally told her we were having coffee today, and she made me promise to ask you over for dinner sometime. Ethan smiled. She doesn't need to make excuses. If you want to have dinner, we can have dinner. I didn't say I wanted to have dinner. I said Lucy wanted you to come over. Right. Of course. Ethan backpedaled, suddenly feeling foolish. I didn't mean to assume. Ethan, Mara looked up, and there was amusement in her eyes now. I'm messing with you. I want you to come to dinner too. Lucy's just braver about asking for things than I am. The relief Ethan felt was disproportionate to the situation, which told him more about his emotional state than he wanted to examine too closely. I'd love to come to dinner, whenever works for you. Thursday? I'm off, and Lucy doesn't have any after-school stuff. Thursday's perfect. They settled into easier conversation after that. Mara told him about her week, picking up extra shifts, dealing with a difficult customer who'd left a 5-cent tip on a $40 bill, Lucy's ongoing campaign to convince her that they needed a pet fish. Ethan found himself genuinely interested, asking questions, laughing at her stories, enjoying the ordinariness of it all. He told her about his work in careful, edited terms. He ran a company, that much was true. It was stressful sometimes, demanding. He traveled more than he liked. The details he left vague, skirting around anything that might reveal the true scale of what he did. It felt dishonest, but also necessary. Once Mara knew who he really was, everything would change. People always changed around money. You know what I realized? Mara said, stirring sugar into her second cup of coffee. I don't actually know your last name. I've invited a man I don't know the last name of to dinner with my daughter. Ethan felt his stomach drop. This was it. The moment where he'd have to decide how honest to be. Brooks wasn't exactly an uncommon name, but combined with Ethan and Chicago and business, even a casual internet search would reveal everything. Brooks, he said, watching her face carefully. Ethan Brooks. Mara repeated it, testing how it sounded. Ethan Brooks. Okay, I'm Mara Collins, but you knew that already. She smiled. There. Now we're properly introduced. No flash of recognition, no sudden change in her expression. Either she genuinely didn't know who he was, or she was an exceptional actress. Ethan was betting on the former. Why would she? His world and hers didn't overlap. She worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. She wasn't reading Forbes or Business Insider. She was just trying to survive. They talked for another 40 minutes, the conversation flowing more naturally than Ethan would have thought possible between 2 people with so little in common. Mara was smart, whip-smart, actually, with observations about people in the world that showed she'd been paying attention even when life had been kicking her down. She was funny, too, in a dry, self-deprecating way that made him laugh more than he had in months. And she was kind. Not in the performative way of people who did charity work for the tax write-offs, but in the genuine, bone-deep way of someone who knew what it was like to struggle and refused to let that make her cruel. When she finally checked her phone and realized she needed to leave, Ethan felt an actual sense of loss. "Thursday," she said, standing and pulling on her coat. 6 o'clock. "Don't be late. Lucy's very particular about dinner time." "I'll be there early," Ethan promised. Mara hesitated, then reached out and squeezed his hand briefly. "I'm glad you came today. It was nice. Really nice." "Yeah," Ethan agreed, his hand still warm where she'd touched it. "It really was." He watched her leave, threading through the coffee shop and out into the gray afternoon, and felt something shift inside him. This was real. Whatever this thing was between them, it was actually happening. And for the first time in years, Ethan wasn't overthinking it, wasn't strategizing or planning 3 moves ahead. He was just letting it unfold. The next day and a half passed in a blur. Ethan tried to focus on work, but found his mind wandering at inappropriate moments. During a conference call with Tokyo, in the middle of reviewing quarterly projections, while his lawyer droned on about some contract clause. He kept thinking about Thursday, about meeting Lucy again, about seeing Mara in her own space, getting a glimpse of the life she'd built for her daughter, despite everything. Thursday morning, he made a decision that would have horrified his assistant if she'd known about it. He went shopping. Not the kind of shopping he usually did, sending someone to pick up whatever he needed or clicking through websites while half paying attention. Actually shopping, walking through stores, looking at things with his own eyes. He bought flowers first. Not roses. Roses felt too romantic, too presumptuous. Tulips instead, cheerful and yellow and uncomplicated. Then he stopped at a toy store, wandering the aisles until he found what he was looking for. A small stuffed rabbit, white and soft, with both ears intact. A friend for Mr. Hopscotch. For Lucy, the card would say. From Ethan. At 5:30, dressed in the same casual clothes he'd worn to Annie's, flowers and rabbit in hand, Ethan found himself standing outside apartment 3C with his heart pounding like he was 17 again, picking up his prom date. He knocked. "Coming?" Lucy's voice, bright and excited, followed by running feet, and Mara's voice calling out, "Lucy, we talked about this. You ask who it is first." "Who is it?" Lucy called dutifully. "It's Ethan." The door flew open. Lucy stood there in a princess dress that had clearly been through multiple owners, her hair in the same lopsided pigtails, her face split by a grin so wide it was almost painful to see. "You came! Mama, he came! And he brought flowers, and—" Her eyes went huge. "Is that a bunny?" "This is for you," Ethan said, handing her the stuffed animal. "I thought Mr. Hopscotch might like some company." Lucy took the rabbit with reverent care, holding it like it was made of spun glass. "He's perfect. He's so perfect. Mama, look, Mr. Hopscotch has a friend." Mara appeared behind her daughter, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She'd changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a soft gray shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked flustered and beautiful. "You didn't have to bring anything," she said, but her eyes went soft when she saw the tulips. "I wanted to," Ethan said simply. "Can I come in?" "Of course, sorry." Mara stepped back, ushering him inside. "It's not much, but it's great," Ethan said, and meant it. The apartment was small, a living room that doubled as a dining area, a tiny kitchen visible through an archway, 2 bedroom doors down a short hallway. But it was clean and warm and filled with evidence of the life lived here. Lucy's drawings covered the refrigerator. Books were stacked on a secondhand coffee table. The yarn Christmas tree still stood in the corner, looking slightly lopsided but cheerful. This was a home. Not a showplace, not an investment property. A home where a mother and daughter built a life together with whatever they had. "I'll put these in water," Mara said, taking the flowers. "Lucy, show Ethan where to put his coat, and maybe introduce him to Mr. Hopscotch's new friend?" Lucy needed no further encouragement. She grabbed Ethan's hand and pulled him toward the couch, already launching into an elaborate story about how Mr. Hopscotch had been hoping for a friend, and now his wish had come true, and they would go on adventures together and maybe save the world from dragons. Ethan listened, properly serious, asking questions at the right moments while Mara moved around the kitchen. He could hear her humming softly, could smell something delicious cooking, chicken maybe, and something with garlic. "Dinner's almost ready," Mara called after a few minutes. "Lucy, Go wash your hands, please. But Mama's hands, now. Lucy sighed dramatically, but obeyed, taking both rabbits with her to the bathroom. That left Ethan alone in the living room, feeling suddenly awkward. He stood up, moved to the kitchen archway. Can I help with anything? You can set the table if you want. Plates are in that cabinet. Mara pointed with her wooden spoon. Ethan found the plates, mismatched, probably from thrift stores, and carried them to the small table by the window. 3 settings. A family dinner. When was the last time he'd done this? Just sat down to eat with people who mattered, without checking his phone, without his mind already on the next meeting. They sat down to roast chicken with roasted vegetables and rice that Mara apologized for being just simple food, nothing fancy. Ethan wanted to tell her that he'd eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants around the world, and none of it had tasted as good as this, food made with care, eaten with people who wanted him there. Lucy chattered through dinner, asking Ethan a million questions. Did he like dinosaurs? What was his favorite color? Had he ever been on an airplane? Could he do a cartwheel? When he admitted he'd never tried, she immediately announced that after dinner she would teach him, despite Mara's protests that Mr. Ethan probably didn't want to do cartwheels in their living room. Actually, Ethan said, grinning at Lucy's hopeful face, I think I'd like to learn. Mara shook her head, but she was smiling. Don't say I didn't warn you when you pull something. After dinner, while Mara cleared the dishes despite Ethan's offers to help, Lucy indeed attempted to teach him to cartwheel. He was terrible at it, unsurprisingly, but Lucy was an encouraging teacher, demonstrating over and over with the patience of someone who truly believed everyone could learn if they just tried hard enough. You're getting better, she announced after his 4th attempt ended with him nearly knocking over a lamp. I'm really not, Ethan said, breathless and laughing. That's enough gymnastics for tonight, Mara interjected, rescuing her furniture. Lucy, it's almost bedtime. But Mama, no buts. You can say goodnight to Ethan. Lucy's face fell, but she came over to where Ethan was sitting on the floor, still trying to catch his breath. Will you come back? The question was asked with such naked hope that Ethan felt his throat tighten. If your mom says it's okay, I'd love to. Mama? Lucy turned pleading eyes on her mother. We'll see, baby. Now go brush your teeth. After Lucy reluctantly disappeared down the hallway, Mara sat down on the couch, and Ethan pulled himself up to sit beside her. Not too close. There was still a respectful distance between them, but close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she carried tension in her shoulders. Thank you for tonight, he said quietly. This was exactly what I needed. Watching a 5-year-old attempt to teach you gymnastics? Being part of something real. Mara looked at him, and Ethan saw her trying to figure him out again. You keep saying things like that, about wanting something real, about your life being empty. But you're clearly successful. You have money. Don't pretend you don't, I can tell. You have a beautiful daughter. What are you running from, Ethan? It was the most direct she'd been, and it deserved an equally direct answer. Myself, maybe, Ethan said slowly. The person I became while I wasn't paying attention. I built this entire life based on success and achievement, and somewhere along the way I forgot to build anything else. I forgot how to just be, with people, without an agenda or a goal, and then I met you and Lucy and you reminded me what I'd lost. That's a lot of pressure to put on 2 strangers. You're not strangers. Not anymore. Mara was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. My ex-husband used to say things like that, about how I made him feel whole, how I was his salvation, right up until the day he decided he needed a different kind of salvation and left us for a woman he met at a bar. There it was, the reason for her walls, her careful distance. She'd been abandoned before. She'd believed someone who'd promised to stay, and he'd left anyway. I'm not going to leave, Ethan said. You can't promise that. You're right. I can't promise I'll always be perfect or always say the right thing, but I can promise I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to. He paused. Has anyone ever just stayed when things got hard? Mara's eyes glistened. Not really. My parents died when I was 19, car accident. My husband left 2 years ago. Everyone else just drifted away. It's usually just me and Lucy against the world. I'm sorry, that's... Ethan didn't have words adequate for the weight of that kind of loneliness. That must be incredibly hard. We manage. Mara wiped her eyes quickly. Sorry, I don't talk about this stuff. Don't apologize. I asked. They sat in silence for a moment, both processing. Then Lucy appeared in the doorway, wearing pajamas with cartoon characters on them, clutching both rabbits. Mama, I'm ready for story time. Okay, baby, I'll be right there. But Lucy didn't move. She looked at Ethan with those perceptive eyes. Will you read it, the story? Mara started to protest, but Ethan was already standing. I'd be honored. If it's okay with your mom? Mara looked between them, then sighed in surrender. Okay, but just one story. It's already past bedtime. Lucy's room was tiny, barely big enough for a twin bed, a small dresser, and a bookshelf made from plastic crates. But it was decorated with all the care Mara could afford. Drawings taped to the walls, a quilt that looked handmade, glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling. Lucy climbed into bed and held up a worn copy of a picture book about a bear who couldn't sleep. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and began to read. He couldn't remember the last time he'd done this, read a bedtime story to a child. Not since Nora was small, before the company consumed everything. His voice came out rusty at first, then steadier as he fell into the rhythm of the story. Lucy leaned against his shoulder, getting heavier as sleep crept up on her. By the last page, her eyes were closing. Ethan finished the story quietly, then carefully extracted himself, tucking the blanket around her small form. Night, Mr. Ethan, Lucy mumbled. Love you. The words were so casual, so innocent, clearly something she said without thought, but they hit Ethan like a physical blow. This child who barely knew him, who had no reason to trust him, had opened her heart with the easy generosity of someone who hadn't yet learned to protect herself. Good night, Lucy, he whispered. Sweet dreams. He found Mara in the kitchen, making tea. She handed him a mug without asking if he wanted one. She falls in love fast, Mara said quietly. With people, with ideas, with stuffed rabbits. She doesn't know how to guard herself yet. That's not a bad thing. It is when people leave. Mara's voice was gentle but firm. I need you to understand something, Ethan. I can handle being hurt. I've been hurt before and I survived. But Lucy, she's 5. She's already lost her father, lost the family she thought she had. If you're going to be part of our lives, you need to be all the way in. I can't have you showing up when it's convenient and disappearing when it's not. I understand. Do you? Because I need to know... Mara stopped, took a breath. I need to know that you're serious about this, about being our friend, or whatever this is. Because if you're not, if this is just you working through some midlife crisis or whatever, I need you to walk away now, before Lucy gets more attached. Before I get more attached, her eyes said, even if her mouth didn't. Ethan set down his mug and turned to face her fully. I'm serious. I know it probably seems crazy. A few days, a couple of dinners, and I'm already... He struggled for the right words. I don't know what this is either, but I know I want to figure it out. I want to be here, in whatever way you'll let me. I want to... His phone rang. He'd silenced it during dinner, but it must have been set to emergency bypass. Catherine's name flashed on the screen. I should... Ethan started to decline the call, but something made him stop. Catherine never called. Not unless something was wrong. I'm sorry, I need to take this. He stepped into the living room. Catherine, what's wrong? Ethan. Her voice was tight, controlled in that way that meant she was barely holding it together. It's Nora. She's sick. We're at the hospital. They think it's appendicitis. They're talking about surgery. The world seemed to tilt. What? When did this start? This afternoon. She said her stomach hurt, but I thought it was just... We didn't realize... Catherine's voice cracked. Can you come? She's asking for you. She was asking for him. His daughter, who barely wanted to talk to him, was in a hospital asking for her father. I'm getting on the next flight. I'll be there as soon as I can. Is she okay right now? They've given her pain medication. They're monitoring her. They might wait until morning for the surgery, or they might do it tonight. I don't know. I need you here, Ethan. I'm coming. I promise. I'm coming. He hung up and stood there for a moment, his mind racing. He needed to call his pilot, needed to pack, needed to… Ethan? Mara stood in the kitchen doorway. What happened? My daughter. She's in the hospital in Seattle. I need to go, right now. All the color drained from Mara's face. Is she okay? I don't know. They think it's appendicitis, maybe surgery. He was already moving, grabbing his coat. I'm sorry, I have to… Go, Mara said firmly. Of course you have to go. Don't apologize. Ethan paused at the door, looking back at her. I'll call you. As soon as I know something, I'll call. Just focus on your daughter. We'll be fine. He wanted to say more, wanted to… What? Promise he'd come back, explain that this didn't change anything? But his mind was already in Seattle, already at the hospital where his 17-year-old daughter was scared and in pain and asking for him. Thank you, he managed. For tonight, for everything. Then he was gone, running down the stairs, already on his phone calling his pilot, his assistant, anyone who could get him to Seattle in the next few hours. Behind him, in apartment 3C, Mara stood at the window, watching him disappear into the night. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying not to think about all the other times men had left promising to come back, trying not to hope, trying not to care, failing at both. The flight to Seattle was the longest 5 hours of Ethan's life. His pilot had gotten the plane ready in record time, but it still felt like moving through molasses. Ethan sat in the leather seat that normally felt luxurious and now just felt wrong, staring at his phone, refreshing his messages every 30 seconds for updates from Catherine. At 30,000 feet, somewhere over Montana, his phone buzzed with a text from Mara. Praying your daughter is okay. Let us know when you can. Just that. Simple, kind, without expectation. Ethan stared at it until his eyes blurred, then typed back, Thank you, I will. I promise. The Seattle night was cold and wet when he landed, rain coming down in sheets. His driver was waiting, someone from the Seattle office who'd been called in at midnight on an emergency. They drove in silence to the hospital, Ethan's leg bouncing with nervous energy, his hands clenched into fists. At the hospital, he found Catherine in a waiting room, still dressed in her pajamas under her coat. Her eyes were red from crying. When she saw him, something in her face crumpled. She's in surgery. They decided not to wait. Her appendix was on the verge of rupturing. Ethan felt his knees go weak. When did they take her? 20 minutes ago. They said it would be about an hour, maybe 2. He sank into the chair beside her. I'm sorry. I should have been here. I should have… You're here now, Catherine said quietly. That's what matters. They sat in silence, these two people who'd once loved each other enough to build a life, now brought together by fear for the child they'd created. Around them, the hospital hummed with activity, nurses passing by, a doctor being paged, somewhere down the hall a baby crying. She really did ask for you, Catherine said after a while. In the ER before they gave her the medication, she kept saying she wanted her dad. Ethan's chest hurt. I talked to her on Christmas. She could barely look at me. She's 17, Ethan. She's supposed to act like she doesn't need you, doesn't mean it's true. I've been a terrible father. Catherine didn't contradict him, which somehow hurt more than if she had. You've been an absent father. There's a difference. Terrible fathers don't fly through the night when their kids need them. They sat together waiting while the minutes crawled by. Ethan found himself thinking about Mara and Lucy, about the life he'd glimpsed in that small apartment, about Lucy falling asleep against his shoulder, about Mara asking if he was serious, about the choice he'd made to walk away from work and towards something real. And now here he was, in another waiting room, being given another chance to choose, to show up, to stay. At 2:15 in the morning, a surgeon appeared, still in his scrubs. Mr. and Mrs. Brooks? They both stood. Yes? Nora's surgery went well. We removed the appendix. It was inflamed but hadn't ruptured. She should make a full recovery. The relief was so intense, Ethan had to sit back down. Catherine was crying again, but this time with relief. Can we see her? She's in recovery. They'll move her to a room in about an hour, and you can see her then. She'll be groggy from the anesthesia, but she should be alert enough to know you're there. After the surgeon left, Catherine turned to Ethan. You should go in first. When they move her, she asked for you. You should be there too. I will be. But she asked for you, Ethan, so you go in first. It was a gift, he realized. Catherine was giving him the chance to be the father he should have been all along. He took her hand, the first time they'd touched in months, maybe years, and squeezed it gently. Thank you. When they finally let him into Nora's room, she was pale against the white sheets, IV lines running from her arm, monitors beeping softly. But her eyes were open, and when she saw him, something in her face shifted. Dad, she said, her voice rough from the breathing tube. Hey, sweetheart. Ethan pulled a chair close to her bedside, taking her hand carefully. How are you feeling? Like someone cut me open, she said, attempting a weak smile. Because someone did. The doctor said it went well. You're going to be fine. I was scared, Nora admitted, and suddenly she looked 5 years old again, small and vulnerable. I don't know what I thought. I just wanted you here. I'm here. I'll always be here when you need me. I promise. You promise a lot of things, Dad. The words stung because they were true. I know, and I've broken too many of them. But not this one. Not anymore. Nora studied him with those sharp, intelligent eyes, eyes that looked like his own. What changed? You sounded different at Christmas, and now you're here, and you look different. I met someone, Ethan said. Then, realizing how that sounded, quickly added, some people. A woman and her daughter. They reminded me what matters. A woman? Despite her pain and exhaustion, Nora managed to look intrigued. Like a girlfriend. Like a friend, maybe. I don't know yet. He smiled. Her daughter is 5. She taught me to cartwheel, or tried to. You? Doing cartwheels? I was terrible at it. Nora laughed, then winced, pressing a hand to her incision. Don't make me laugh. It hurts. Sorry. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Nora said, I want to meet them. Your friend and her daughter. You do? Yeah. Anyone who can get you to do cartwheels must be pretty special. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. They are. And you will. When you're feeling better, we'll figure it out. Dad? Nora's voice was getting drowsy, the pain medication pulling her back towards sleep. I'm glad you came. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. He sat with her until she fell asleep, his hand holding hers, his mind full of thoughts about second chances and new beginnings and the strange ways life could pull you apart and push you back together. Catherine came in eventually, and they took turns keeping vigil while Nora slept through the early morning hours. As dawn broke over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ethan pulled out his phone and texted Mara. She's okay. Surgery went well. I'll be here for a few days, but I wanted you to know. Thank you for caring. The response came almost immediately, which meant Mara hadn't slept either. So relieved. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. It was the first time anyone had ever said that to him and made him believe it. Ethan looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully, at Catherine dozing in the other chair, at the Seattle morning coming alive outside the window. He'd spent 3 years running from loneliness, building walls, choosing work over everything else. And then a chance encounter in a diner had started to tear those walls down. Now, sitting in a hospital room with his daughter recovering from surgery, Ethan understood something fundamental had shifted. He'd been given a second chance. With Nora. With Mara and Lucy. With himself. The question was whether he was brave enough to take it. As if in answer, Nora's hand squeezed his, even in sleep, holding on, trusting him to stay. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan Brooks knew exactly what he needed to do. He needed to choose. Not money, not success, not the empire that had cost him everything. He needed to choose love, in all its messy, complicated, terrifying forms, starting right now. Ethan stayed in Seattle for 6 days. 6 days that felt like stepping into a parallel universe where he wasn't CEO of anything, wasn't responsible for quarterly earnings or shareholder value. He was just a father, sitting beside his daughter's hospital bed, then helping her navigate the stairs to Catherine's guest room, then making her soup she barely touched because the pain medication killed her appetite. Catherine had been gracious about it all, setting him up in the downstairs bedroom without comment. accepting his presence in her home with a kind of weary relief that suggested she was just as tired of doing everything alone as he was of being alone. They moved around each other with the careful politeness of former lovers who'd learned to be civil, sharing updates about Nora's recovery, coordinating medication schedules, taking turns sitting with her when the pain got bad at night. On the third day, while Nora napped, Catherine made them both coffee and sat across from him at her kitchen table, a table he'd never seen before, in a house he'd never visited, in a life he'd never been part of. "You're different," she said without preamble. "I wasn't sure at first, but you are. Something's changed." Ethan wrapped his hands around his mug. "I met someone. Some people. In Chicago. The woman and her daughter. Nora mentioned them." Catherine's expression was unreadable. "Is it serious?" "I don't know. Maybe. It's new and it's complicated and I have no idea what I'm doing." He looked up at his ex-wife. "But it made me realize how much I'd lost, how much I'd let slip away while I was busy building something that doesn't actually matter. Your company matters. To a lot of people. Does it matter more than my daughter?" The question hung in the air between them. "Because that's the choice I made, Catherine, over and over, and I can't take that back." Catherine was quiet for a long moment, studying him with eyes that had once known him better than anyone. "No, you can't take it back, but you can do better going forward. If you mean it." "I mean it." "Then prove it." Her voice wasn't harsh, just matter-of-fact. "Don't just show up when there's a crisis. Show up on Tuesday afternoons and boring weekends and times when nothing's wrong. That's when it counts." She was right, of course. Grand gestures were easy. It was the daily choice to stay, to be present, to keep choosing even when the novelty wore off. That was the hard part. Ethan had been texting Mara every day, brief updates about Nora's recovery, asking how she and Lucy were doing. Her responses were warm but careful, as if she was maintaining some emotional distance while he was away. He couldn't blame her. He'd run out of her apartment in the middle of dinner, and for all she knew, he might never come back. On the fourth day, Lucy sent him a video message. Mara must have helped her record it. The little girl's face filled the screen, Mr. Hopscotch and his new friend visible in the background. "Hi, Mr. Ethan. Mama says your daughter is sick and you're being a good daddy and taking care of her. That's very nice. We miss you. Mr. Hopscotch and Mr." She paused, looking off screen. "Mama, what should we name the new bunny?" Mara's voice laughing. "You need to decide that yourself, baby." "Mr. Snowflake, because he's white like snow. Anyway, Mr. Hopscotch and Mr. Snowflake miss you too. Come home soon, okay? Bye." Ethan must have watched that video 20 times. Each time, he felt something tighten in his chest, a mixture of longing and fear and hope so intense it was almost painful. Lucy missed him. After a handful of encounters, this child had made space for him in her life, trusted him enough to miss him. He showed the video to Nora, who was finally feeling well enough to sit up without wincing. "She's adorable," Nora said, smiling at the screen. "She named the bunny Mr. Snowflake?" "Apparently." "And you really did cartwheels in her living room?" "Attempted cartwheels. There's a difference." Nora looked at him with an expression that reminded him so much of Catherine it hurt. "You really like them, don't you? This woman and her daughter." Ethan considered lying, downplaying it, but what was the point? "Yeah, I really do." "What's she like? The mom?" "How did you describe Mara to a 17-year-old who'd grown up with every privilege?" "She's strong, stronger than anyone I've ever met. She works 2 jobs to support her daughter, and she never complains about it. She's smart and funny, and she doesn't take any of my bullshit." "You have a lot of bullshit," Nora pointed out. "I'm aware." "Does she know about who you are, what you do?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "She knows I work in business. I haven't been specific about the details." Nora's eyebrows rose. "Dad, you have to tell her." "I will, when the time is right." "The time is right now, before this goes any further. She's going to find out eventually, and if you wait too long, she's going to think you were lying to her." "I'm not lying, I'm just omitting certain details." "That's literally lying by omission." Nora shook her head. "You like her because she treats you like a normal person, right? But you can't have a real relationship with someone while pretending to be someone you're not. Trust me, I learned that the hard way with Jake Morrison. Jake Morrison, the boy who'd broken her heart when she was 15. Ethan remembered getting the late-night call from Catherine, remembered the guilt of being in London while his daughter cried herself to sleep. What happened with Jake Morrison? Nora looked surprised that he'd remembered the name.
He liked me because I was Nora Brooks, daughter of billionaire Ethan Brooks. Thought if he dated me, he'd get invited to fancy parties, meet important people. When he realized I'm just a regular person who likes marine biology and bad sci-fi movies, he lost interest. He was an idiot. Yeah, well, point is, you need to be honest with Mara. If she likes you for real, it won't matter how much money you have. And if it does matter, better to find out now. When had his daughter become so wise? Ethan reached over and carefully squeezed her hand. When did you grow up? While you were busy working. But she said it without malice now, just stating a fact. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad, Dad. I'm just saying, don't make the same mistakes with Lucy that you made with me. Kids need you to show up, the real you, not some edited version.
That night, Ethan lay in Catherine's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about honesty and omission and the difference between the two. Nora was right. He couldn't build something real with Mara while hiding fundamental truths about who he was. But he was terrified of what would happen when she knew. Would she look at him differently? Would she pull away, afraid of the vast gulf between their worlds? Would she think he'd been slumming, playing at poverty tourism with her life? His phone buzzed. A text from Mara. Lucy's asleep, but she made me promise to send you a goodnight message. So, good night from both of us. Hope Nora's feeling better. Ethan stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, Can I call you, just for a few minutes? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, yes. His hands were shaking slightly as he dialed. She answered on the second ring. Hi. Mara's voice, soft and a little uncertain. Hi, sorry, I know it's late there. It's okay, I was still up. A pause. How is she, really? She's doing well, better every day. The doctor says she can go back to school next week, though Catherine will probably make her wait a few more days. That's good. I'm glad. Silence stretched between them, comfortable but weighted with things unsaid. I miss you, Ethan said, surprising himself with the admission. Both of you, is that weird? We barely know each other. A little weird, Mara admitted, but I miss you too. Lucy asks about you every day. When are you coming home? Is your daughter okay? Does Mr. Ethan still remember us? Of course I remember you. How could I forget you? People forget, Mara said quietly. It's easy to forget when you're back in your real life, dealing with real things. We were just a moment, Ethan. A nice moment, but you're not just a moment. He struggled for words. You're the first real thing I've felt in 3 years. You and Lucy. And I know that's a lot to put on you, and I'm sorry if it's too much, but I needed you to know. Before I come back. Before this goes any further. Ethan, I'm not who you think I am, he continued, needing to get it out. I mean, I am, but I'm also more than that. The company I run, it's not small. It's big, really big. And I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And I live in a penthouse that costs more than most people make in a year. And He took a breath. My full name is Ethan Brooks. If you Google it, you'll find out everything. And I need you to do that before I come back because I can't keep pretending to be something I'm not. The silence on the other end was deafening. Ethan closed his eyes, waiting for her to hang up, to tell him she didn't want to see him again, Okay, Mara said finally. Okay? Okay, I'll Google you. And then we'll talk when you get back. Her voice was carefully neutral. Ethan, I need to go, but I'm glad Nora's okay. And I'm glad you told me. Mara, we'll talk when you get back, she repeated. Good night, Ethan. The line went dead. Ethan sat in the darkness of Catherine's guest room, his phone clutched in his hand, wondering if he'd just destroyed the best thing to happen to him in years. But Nora was right. He couldn't build something real on a foundation of half-truths. If Mara was going to walk away, better it happen now than months from now when he was even more invested, when Lucy was even more attached. when the hurt would be catastrophic instead of just painful. He didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, Nora took one look at him and said, "You told her." "How did you know?" "You look like you're going to throw up. What did she say?" "She said she'd Google me and we'd talk when I got back." "Well, that's not a no. It's not a yes either." Nora shrugged. "At least you were honest. That's something." That's something. It had to be enough. Ethan spent the next 2 days in a state of low-level anxiety, checking his phone constantly for messages from Mara that never came. She'd gone silent, and he didn't blame her. She was probably reading about his company, his wealth, his divorce settlement that had made headlines because of the sheer amounts involved. She was probably realizing he'd been essentially lying to her, letting her count coins for soup while he could have bought the entire diner without noticing the expense. On the 6th day, Nora was well enough that Catherine felt comfortable with Ethan leaving. He'd been planning to fly back that afternoon, but Nora stopped him as he was packing. "Dad, wait. I want to ask you something." "What's up, sweetheart?" She was sitting on her bed, still moving carefully, but looking more like herself every day. "Can I come with you? To Chicago?" Ethan blinked. "To Chicago? What about school?" "I can miss a week. Mom can email my teachers. I'll make up the work. But I want to meet them, Mara and Lucy. If they're going to be part of your life, I want to know them." "Nora, I don't even know if Mara wants to see me again after. So let's find out together." Nora's expression was determined. "Besides, you're less likely to screw it up if I'm there to help." Despite everything, Ethan laughed. "That's probably true. So can I come?" He looked at his daughter, his smart, brave, wonderful daughter who'd spent too many years without him and was now offering to help him build a new life. How could he say no? "Let me ask your mom." Catherine surprisingly agreed immediately. "She needs to know these people if they're important to you. And honestly, Ethan, she needs to spend time with you. Real time, not just crisis time." So that afternoon, Ethan and Nora flew back to Chicago together. Nora spent most of the flight asking questions about Mara and Lucy, making him describe every interaction in detail, offering teenage wisdom about relationships that was surprisingly insightful. "Just be yourself," she advised as they began their descent. "The real you, the guy who does bad cartwheels and reads bedtime stories, not the CEO guy. She doesn't care about that version." "What if she does care? What if that's the problem?" "Then she's not the right person." "But Dad?" Nora looked at him seriously. "I don't think that's going to be the problem." They landed at 9 p.m. Ethan had texted Mara from the plane. "Back in Chicago. Brought someone who wants to meet you. Can we talk? Tomorrow maybe?" The response came as they were collecting luggage. "Annie's Coffee, 2 p.m. Bring your someone." Short, direct, giving nothing away. Ethan showed the message to Nora. "Well," she said, "at least she's willing to meet. That's good, right?" "I have no idea." That night, Ethan barely slept in his too-big penthouse. Nora had been appropriately awed by the space, wandering through rooms with wide eyes, but she'd also said, "Dad, this place is beautiful, but it's so lonely. How do you live here by yourself?" "Not very well," he'd admitted. The next day dragged by with excruciating slowness. Ethan tried to work but couldn't focus. Gerald had approximately 1,000 issues that needed addressing, but Ethan found he didn't care. Let the Singapore deal fall apart. Let the stock price fluctuate. Let the whole empire crumble if it had to. Right now, the only thing that mattered was walking into Annie's Coffee at 2 p.m. and finding out if he'd destroyed his chance at something real. Nora insisted they arrive exactly on time, not early, not late. "You don't want to seem too eager, but you also don't want to seem like you don't care. When did you become an expert on relationships?" "YouTube," she said seriously. "And also basic common sense, which you apparently lack." They walked into Annie's together, and Ethan spotted Mara immediately. She was at the same corner table, but this time Lucy was with her, working on a coloring book with fierce concentration. Both of them looked up as Ethan and Nora approached. For a moment, nobody moved. Ethan tried to read Mara's expression and failed. She'd rebuilt her walls, her face carefully neutral. But Lucy had no such restraints. "Mr. Ethan!" She launched herself from her chair and ran to him, hugging his legs with the unselfconscious affection of childhood. You came back. You really came back. Ethan crouched down to her level. Of course I came back. I promised, didn't I? Lots of people promise. Lucy's statement was matter-of-fact, without bitterness, just reporting what she'd learned about the world. Then she noticed Nora. Are you the daughter, the one who was sick? I'm Nora, Nora said, kneeling beside Ethan. And yeah, I was sick, but I'm better now. Thanks for asking. Lucy studied her with those two perceptive eyes. You look like Mr. Ethan. You have the same nose. That's because he's my dad. Does that mean if he's friends with us, you're friends with us too? I'd like to be, Nora said, if that's okay with you. Lucy considered this seriously, then nodded. Okay, do you like rabbits? Because I have two now, and they need lots of friends. I love rabbits. Then you can meet Mr. Hopscotch and Mr. Snowflake. Lucy grabbed Nora's hand, already pulling her toward the table, chattering about the rabbit's various adventures. That left Ethan standing awkwardly in the middle of the coffee shop. He turned to Mara, who was watching the interaction between her daughter and his with an expression he couldn't quite read. Hi, he said. Hi. Mara gestured to the table. Sit down, Ethan. He sat. Lucy and Nora were already deep in conversation at the other end of the table, Lucy's coloring book spread between them. That left Ethan and Mara facing each other with 2 cups of coffee and a chasm of unspoken words. I Googled you, Mara said without preamble. I figured you would. Ethan Brooks, CEO of Brooks Industries, net worth estimated at $3.7 billion. Recently named one of Fortune's most influential CEOs. Divorced from Catherine Brooks, née Winters, daughter of Senator James Winters. 1 child, Nora Brooks, 17. Mara recited it like she was reading from a script. Did I miss anything? That about covers it. You let me count change for soup. Her voice was still neutral, but Ethan could hear the hurt underneath. You watched me worry about whether we could afford dinner while you could have bought the entire restaurant without blinking. I know. Yet you stood in my apartment and let me apologize for only having simple food while you probably eat at Michelin-starred restaurants every week. I don't care about that stuff, Mara. That's not why I... Then why? She leaned forward, and now he could see emotion breaking through, anger, hurt, confusion, all tangled together. Why pretend to be someone you're not? Was it fun? Playing poor for a few days, seeing how the other half lives? No, it was never that. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, frustrated with himself for not having better words. I wasn't pretending to be someone else. I was pretending to be less. Because when people know who I am, what I have, they change. They want something, or they act different, or they treat me like I'm made of money instead of flesh and blood. And you didn't know, so you just treated me like a person, like Ethan, not like a walking bank account. So you lied. I omitted, which I know is basically the same thing, and I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I wanted to, but I was scared you'd... He gestured helplessly. I was scared you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me right now. Mara sat back, her arms crossed. How am I looking at you? Like you're trying to figure out if anything between us was real. Like you're wondering if I was just amusing myself with you and Lucy. Like we were some kind of charity project or social experiment. Were we? No. The word came out fierce, almost angry. You were the first real thing I've felt in 3 years. You and Lucy. When I was with you, I wasn't the CEO, I wasn't the billionaire, I wasn't the guy who screwed up his marriage and failed his daughter. I was just a man having dinner with people who made me laugh, who made me feel less alone. You should have told me. I know, you're right. I should have been honest from the beginning. Ethan glanced over at Lucy and Nora, who were giggling over something in the coloring book. But I'm being honest now. Everything is on the table. This is who I am. All of it. The money, the company, the penthouse, the private plane. And also the guy who's terrible at cartwheels and reads bedtime stories and showed up at a community center on Christmas because he couldn't stand his own loneliness. That's all me. And I understand if it's too much, if you want nothing to do with it, but I need you to know that what I feel for you and Lucy, that's real. That was always real. Mara was quiet for a long time, her eyes searching his face. At the other end of the table, Lucy was showing Nora her drawing, a picture of two rabbits under a rainbow. I was angry, Mara said finally. When I read about you, I was so angry I almost didn't come today. I felt like you'd made a fool of me. You're not... She held up a hand. Let me finish. I was angry and hurt, and I felt stupid for not seeing it. But then Lucy asked if you were coming back, and I realized I didn't actually know the answer. You'd been gone for 6 days, and you could have just stayed gone. Sent a nice text, a generous check, moved on with your life. That's what people with money usually do. I'm not most people with money. No, Mara agreed. You're not. You came back. You brought your daughter to meet us. You sat there and let me be angry instead of trying to buy your way out of it. She paused. That actually means something. So you're not telling me to get lost? A small smile tugged at her lips. I'm still deciding. That's fair. I need you to understand something, Ethan. I can't afford your world. I can't compete with private planes and penthouses and whatever else comes with being a billionaire. And I won't let Lucy grow up thinking that's normal, that money solves everything. I'm not asking you to compete. I'm asking you to let me be part of your world, not the other way around. Your world comes with you whether you want it to or not. I know, but I can choose what I do with it, how I live, what I prioritize. Ethan leaned forward. I spent 3 years chasing success until it nearly destroyed me. I don't want to do that anymore. I want dinners in small apartments and community centers and coffee shops where nobody knows my name. I want to be around people who see me, not my bank account. That's easy to say now when it's new and exciting, but what about in 6 months when the novelty wears off? When you remember how much easier it is to just live in your world with your things and your people? It was the same question Catherine had asked, in different words. Don't just show up for the crisis. Show up for the boring Tuesday afternoons. I can't promise I'll be perfect, Ethan said honestly. I'll probably mess up. I'll probably slip back into old habits sometimes. But I can promise I'll try. Every day I'll choose this. Choose you and Lucy. If you'll let me. Mara looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan held his breath, waiting. Mama? Lucy called from the other end of the table. Nora says her dad has a really big apartment. Can we go see it? Mara's eyebrows rose. Lucy, we can't just invite ourselves to people's homes. I don't mind, Ethan said quickly. I mean, if you're comfortable with it, I'd like you to see where I live. All of it. No more secrets. Nora chimed in. It's honestly ridiculous, Mrs. Collins, like unnecessary big, but the view is pretty cool. Mara looked between Ethan and Nora, then down at Lucy's hopeful face, then back at Ethan. Okay, she said finally. Let's go see this ridiculous apartment. But Ethan? Yeah? This doesn't mean I've forgiven you. It just means I'm willing to keep figuring this out. I'll take it. They took 2 cars. Mara insisted on driving her own, maintaining some independence. Ethan understood. She wasn't ready to be swept up into his life completely. She needed to know she could leave if she wanted to. In his car, Nora said, She's tough. Yeah. I like her. Yeah? Yeah. And Lucy's adorable. Did you know she wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up? Specifically for rabbits. Ethan smiled. I didn't know that. She's very serious about it. Nora paused. Dad, what are you going to do? About her and Lucy, I mean, if this gets serious. I don't know. Take it one day at a time, I guess. That's very un-CEO-like of you. Usually you have a 10-year plan for everything. Yeah, well, maybe that's part of the problem. When they reached his building, Ethan saw Mara's expression shift as she took in the gleaming glass tower, the uniformed doorman, the marble lobby. Lucy was oblivious, delighted by the elevator that moved so smoothly she couldn't even tell they were moving. The penthouse was exactly as he'd left it. Enormous, empty, beautiful in the way museums were beautiful. Nora immediately took Lucy on a tour, the little girl's excited exclamations echoing through rooms that had been silent for far too long. Mara stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at Chicago spread beneath them. This is where you live, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. This is where I exist, Ethan corrected. I don't know if I'd call it living. It's beautiful. It's empty. Mara turned to face him. Ethan, I need you to really think about what you're asking for here. You say you want to be part of our life, but our life is nothing like this. Our life is a 3-flight walk-up with neighbors who fight at 2 a.m. and a heater that doesn't work half the time. Our life is scraping together money for groceries and wondering if we can afford new shoes when Lucy grows out of her old ones. Can you really give up all this? She gestured at the penthouse. Because that's what being with us means. It means Lucy will see this and know we can never give her anything close to it. It means every day she'll be reminded of what she doesn't have. Or, Ethan said carefully, it means we find a middle ground. I'm not asking you to be poor, Mara, and I'm not going to pretend I don't have resources that could make your life easier. But that doesn't have to change who you are or how you raise Lucy. Money changes everything. Not if we don't let it. Mara laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's naive, Ethan. Really naive. Maybe, but I'd rather be naive and try than cynical and alone. Before Mara could respond, Lucy came running back, Nora trailing behind her. Mama, Mama, there's a bathtub big enough to swim in, and Mr. Ethan has a room just for his clothes, and there's a thing that makes ice and water from the door. A refrigerator, Nora supplied helpfully. A refrigerator. Lucy was bouncing with excitement. Can we live here, Mama? Can we? Mara's face went pale. Lucy, honey, we have our own home. But this one is so big, and Mr. Ethan is all alone here. He needs people. Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan felt his throat tighten at the simple truth of it. He did need people. He'd been alone in this beautiful prison for 3 years, and he was tired of it. Lucy, Mara said gently, kneeling down to her daughter's level. We're just visiting. This is Mr. Ethan's home, not ours. Lucy's face fell. But why can't it be ours too? Because some things are complicated, baby. Grown-ups always say that when they mean no. Lucy crossed her arms, her lower lip trembling. I thought Mr. Ethan was our friend. Friends share. We are friends, Ethan said, crouching beside Mara. And you're right, friends do share. But your mama is also right that it's complicated. Sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out. How much time? I don't know. But however long it takes, I'm not going anywhere, okay? Lucy studied him with those eyes that saw too much. Promise? I promise. Okay. She seemed satisfied with that, turning back to Nora. Can you show me the swimming bathtub again? After they left, Mara sat down on Ethan's expensive couch and put her head in her hands. This is impossible. It doesn't have to be. Yes, it does. Ethan, did you hear her? She wants to live here. How do I compete with swimming bathtubs and ice makers in the door? How do I teach her to be grateful for what we have when she's seen what you have? Ethan sat beside her, careful not to sit too close. You don't compete. You just keep being the amazing mother you are. Lucy loves you, Mara, not because of what you can give her materially, but because you show up every single day and love her. That's worth more than any penthouse. Is it? Mara looked up and her eyes were wet. Because from where I'm sitting, it doesn't feel like enough. It's everything, Ethan said firmly. And if you'll let me, I'd like to help. Not by throwing money at everything, but by being there, being present, being another person who loves Lucy and wants what's best for her. You barely know her. Then let me get to know her. Let me get to know both of you, really know you. Not just the edited version we show people we're trying to impress. The real, messy, complicated version. Mara was quiet for a long time. In the other room, they could hear Lucy and Nora laughing about something, the sound of children who were becoming friends. I'm scared, Mara admitted finally. I'm scared of what happens when Lucy gets attached and you leave. I'm scared of what happens if you stay and we have to navigate this impossible gap between our worlds. I'm scared of getting used to having someone and then losing them again. I'm scared too, Ethan said. I'm terrified. But I'm more scared of not trying, of going back to my empty apartment and my empty life and wondering what might have been if I'd just been brave enough. Brave or stupid? Maybe both. Mara smiled despite herself. Then, so quietly, he almost missed it. Okay. Okay? Okay, let's try. But slowly, Ethan. We go slow, we set boundaries, and the first time I feel like this is hurting Lucy, we stop. Agreed? Agreed. They sat there on his couch, worth more than her monthly rent, in his penthouse overlooking a city full of people, and made a pact to try. To build something neither of them fully understood yet, something that defied logic and common sense and probably financial advice too. But as Nora and Lucy came back into the room, both wearing smiles that matched their growing friendship, Ethan thought maybe that was okay. Maybe the best things in life didn't make sense on paper. Maybe they just required faith, faith that two broken people could help each other heal, that two different worlds could find a way to merge, that love could be enough even when everything else was uncertain. So, Nora said, looking between the adults, "Did you guys figure it out?" "We're working on it," Mara said. "Good enough." Nora turned to Lucy. "Hey, how would you like to come over sometime and we can watch a movie? I'm thinking something with rabbits." "There's a movie with rabbits?" "Several. We'll need snacks, though." "I can make popcorn," Lucy volunteered. As the girls made plans, Ethan caught Mara's eye. She gave him a small smile, not her full smile, not yet, but a beginning. A maybe. A we'll see. It was enough. For now, it was more than enough. Outside the windows, Chicago hummed with life. And inside the penthouse that had been empty for so long, four people who'd found each other in the strangest of ways began the tentative work of becoming something like a family. It wouldn't be easy. There would be missteps and misunderstandings, moments of doubt and fear. But they would figure it out together, one day at a time, one small choice at a time. Starting right now. The weeks that followed were a study in careful navigation. Ethan kept his promise. He showed up. Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, though he had to physically restrain himself more than once from trying to solve every problem with his checkbook. He showed up on Tuesday afternoons when nothing was happening, on Saturday mornings to help Lucy with her reading homework, on Thursday evenings when Mara was exhausted from double shifts and just needed another adult to talk to. He learned the rhythm of their lives. Lucy had ballet on Wednesdays, though ballet was generous for what was essentially organized chaos in a church basement with a teacher who was 65 and could barely demonstrate the moves anymore. Mara worked breakfast and lunch shifts at the diner, then 3 nights a week cleaned office buildings until midnight. Their apartment was always a little too cold because the landlord was slow to fix things, and there was a neighbor on the second floor who played drums at inappropriate hours. It was messy and imperfect and nothing like the controlled environment Ethan was used to. It was also the most alive he'd felt in years. Nora had gone back to Seattle after a week, but she video called Lucy twice a week, the two of them chattering about school and rabbits and whatever else occupied their very different worlds. Catherine had been cautiously supportive when Ethan told her about Mara and Lucy, saying only, "Don't screw this up. Those people need you to be reliable." "I know." "Do you?" "Because you have a track record, Ethan." "I'm trying to do better." "Then actually do better, not just with them, with Nora too. She needs to see that you can follow through." So Ethan flew to Seattle every other weekend, spending Saturday and Sunday with Nora. They went to the aquarium because she loved marine life. They hiked in the rain because that's what Seattle required. They talked, really talked, about school and her college plans and the boys she kind of liked but wasn't sure about. He learned that she wanted to study at UC San Diego for their marine biology program, that she was terrified of leaving her mom alone, that she'd been accepted to a summer research program but hadn't told him because she assumed he'd be too busy to care. "I care," Ethan said, sitting across from her at a coffee shop near Catherine's house. "I always cared, Nora. I just did a terrible job of showing it." "Yeah, you did." She stirred her latte, not looking at him. "But you're doing better now. Mom noticed too. She said you've been different since you met Mara." "I feel different." "Good different or midlife crisis different?" Ethan smiled. "Hopefully good different. You'll have to tell me." "I will," Nora promised. "And Dad? I'm glad you're trying. With me. With them. It matters." Back in Chicago, things with Mara progressed slowly, carefully. They went on actual dates. Nothing fancy, despite Ethan's instincts. Coffee shops and diners, and one memorable evening at a street fair where Lucy rode a tiny pony and Ethan won her a stuffed elephant by somehow succeeding at the ring toss on his 14th try. You're terrible at carnival games, Mara observed, laughing. I'm terrible at most things that aren't business, Ethan admitted, but I'm learning. They talked about everything. Mara told him about her childhood in rural Indiana, about losing her parents in the accident that had derailed her college plans, about meeting her ex-husband when she was 21 and thinking he was her second chance at family, about the slow deterioration of that marriage, the way he'd started staying out later, drinking more, until finally he just stopped coming home at all. He sends money sometimes, Mara said one night. They were sitting in her apartment after Lucy had gone to bed, sharing a bottle of wine that Ethan had brought. Not much, not regularly, but sometimes. I think he feels guilty. Does Lucy ask about him? Not anymore. She did at first, but he never showed up when he said he would. After the third or fourth time, she stopped asking. Mara's voice was carefully neutral, but Ethan could hear the anger underneath. That's the part I can't forgive. Disappointing me is one thing. Disappointing her is unforgivable. Ethan told her about his own failures, the missed birthdays and soccer games, the promises broken in favor of conference calls, the slow realization that he'd traded his family for an empire that couldn't love him back. Nora said something to me in the hospital, he shared. She said there's a lot I don't know about her, and she was right. I don't know my own daughter because I was too busy being important. But you're changing that now. I'm trying. I don't know if it's enough. Mara reached across the small space between them and took his hand. It was the first time she'd initiated physical contact since the day at the coffee shop, and Ethan felt it like electricity. Trying is enough, she said quietly. Trying is more than most people do. 2 months in, they had their first real fight. Ethan had noticed Lucy's winter coat was held together with safety pins and duct tape, and without thinking, he'd gone out and bought her a new one. A really nice one. The kind that cost $300 and would last for years. He'd presented it to Lucy one Saturday afternoon, and she'd been delighted, immediately putting it on and twirling around the apartment. But Mara's face had gone still and cold. After Lucy went to play in her room, Mara rounded on him. What the hell was that? What, the coat? Her old one was falling apart. So you bought her a $300 coat without asking me first? I didn't. How did you know it cost $300? Because I Google searched it while you two were playing. Ethan, we talked about this. You can't just throw money at every problem. I wasn't throwing money at a problem. I was making sure a 5-year-old had a warm coat for winter. She had a coat. Barely. Mara, it's going to be below freezing next week. I couldn't... He stopped himself, recognizing he was on dangerous ground. I'm sorry, I should have asked first. Yes, you should have. Mara's arms were crossed, her body language defensive. Do you know how that makes me feel? Like I can't provide for my own daughter, like I need you to swoop in and save us. That's not what I was trying to do. Isn't it? Ethan, I know you mean well. I know you have more money than you know what to do with, and I know seeing Lucy in a raggedy coat probably offends your billionaire sensibilities. But she's my daughter. Taking care of her is my job, not yours. I'm not trying to take over, I just wanted to help. Help by asking first. Help by respecting that I have pride too, that I've been doing this alone for 2 years, and we've been fine. Fine isn't good enough when it doesn't have to be. The words were out before Ethan could stop them, and he saw Mara flinch like he'd slapped her. Get out, she said quietly. Mara, I need you to leave. Now. Before I say something I'll regret. Ethan left, his heart pounding, mentally kicking himself all the way back to his penthouse. He'd done exactly what he'd promised not to do. He'd assumed money could fix everything, had overstepped without thinking about how it would make Mara feel. He texted her that night. I'm sorry, you were right. I overstepped. No response. He tried again the next morning. Can we talk, please? Still nothing. By the third day of silence, Ethan was going out of his mind. He showed up at the diner during Mara's shift, sitting in a back booth until she had no choice but to acknowledge him. I'm working, she said, her voice professionally neutral. I know, I'll order something, but Mara, please. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. My break is in 20 minutes. Don't order coffee. My manager will make you leave if you're just taking up space. Ethan ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, a mediocre steak that he had no appetite for, and waited. When Mara finally slid into the booth across from him, she looked exhausted. "You look tired," Ethan said. "I am tired. I've been picking up extra shifts because apparently my daughter needs things like winter coats, and I'm too proud to accept them from people who can actually afford them. That's not fair." "No? Then explain to me how this is supposed to work, Ethan, because I don't know. I don't know how to let you help without feeling like I'm failing. I don't know how to accept your money without feeling bought, and I really don't know how to raise my daughter around someone who can casually drop $300 on a coat like it's nothing." "What if it doesn't have to be all or nothing?" Ethan said carefully. "What if we find a middle ground? You tell me what you need, what you're comfortable with, and I respect those boundaries. Always. And if what I need is for you to stop trying to solve everything with your wallet, then I'll stop. I'll mess up sometimes, probably, because it's my instinct, but I'll try. And when I screw up, you call me on it, and I'll do better." Mara studied him with those careful eyes. "You returned the coat, didn't you? How did you know?" "Because you're predictable, and because Lucy was devastated this morning when she couldn't find it." Ethan winced. "I'm sorry, I didn't think—" "No, you didn't." But Mara's voice had softened slightly. "Here's what we're going to do. You're going to get that coat back, and you're going to give it to Lucy and tell her it's an early Christmas present from you to her, not because I can't afford to buy her things, but because you care about her and you wanted to give her something nice. Can you do that?" "Yes. But Mara, I need you to meet me halfway here. I need you to understand that part of caring about someone is wanting to make their life easier when you can, and I can. So let me sometimes. Not all the time, not for everything, but sometimes." "It's hard for me," Mara admitted. "Accepting help. I've been doing everything alone for so long, and every time I've let someone in, they've left. Or they've used it against me. My ex used to throw money in my face during arguments, telling me I'd be nothing without him. So when you buy expensive things without asking, it triggers that. It makes me feel small." "I never want to make you feel small. You're the strongest person I know." "Then treat me like a partner, not a charity case. Ask before you buy things. Let me contribute in the ways I can, and trust that I know what my daughter needs." "I can do that. I will do that." They sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the diner fading into background static. Then Mara reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm sorry too, for shutting you out instead of just talking to you. That wasn't fair. You were hurt. You're allowed to be hurt." "Yeah, but I'm also supposed to be an adult who uses her words." She smiled slightly. "Lucy's therapist tells me that all the time. Apparently it applies to grown-ups too." "Lucy has a therapist?" "Once a month. Her school has a program. She needed help processing her dad leaving." Mara paused. "She talks about you in therapy now. Did you know that?" "She does?" "She told her therapist that Mr. Ethan is teaching her that not all men leave, that some people keep their promises." Mara's eyes were bright. "Don't make a liar out of her, Ethan, please." "I won't, I promise." They found their rhythm after that. Ethan learned to ask before assuming, to offer help without steamrolling Mara's independence. He paid for things sometimes, always with permission. But he also learned to accept the things Mara could offer: her time, her cooking, her knowledge of how to survive on a tight budget, her ability to fix almost anything with duct tape and determination. He introduced her to Gerald, who looked at Mara with such obvious confusion that it was almost funny. This was the woman who'd gotten their CEO to actually take time off, this server from a diner? But Gerald was professional enough to be polite, and smart enough to recognize that Ethan was happier than he'd been in years. Mara introduced Ethan to her world too. He met Mrs. Chen, who subjected him to 20 minutes of interrogation before declaring him acceptable but on probation. He met the other servers at the diner, the single moms and college students working multiple jobs to make ends meet. He met Lucy's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who pulled him aside and said quietly, "I don't know what you did, but Lucy's been so much happier lately. She talks about you constantly." 3 months in, Mara invited Ethan to have dinner at her apartment, just the two of them. Lucy was having a sleepover at a friend's house, the first one Mara had felt comfortable allowing. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked when she'd first mentioned it. "I can take you somewhere nice, a real restaurant. I want to cook for you, in my home, is that okay?" It was more than okay. It felt significant, intimate in a way their public dates hadn't been. Ethan showed up with flowers, tulips again, because Mara had mentioned once that they reminded her of her mother's garden, and a bottle of wine he'd spent an embarrassing amount of time selecting. Mara answered the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair down, barefoot in her own apartment. She was beautiful. "Hi," she said, suddenly looking nervous. "Hi." Ethan stepped inside, handed her the flowers. "These are for you." "They're perfect. Come in, dinner's almost ready." She'd made chicken parmesan with pasta, garlic bread, a salad. Simple food, but it smelled incredible. They ate at her small table by the window, talking easily about their weeks. Ethan told her about a board meeting that had gone sideways. Mara told him about a customer who'd left a $100 tip on a $20 bill with a note that said, "For everyone who doesn't tip enough." After dinner, they moved to the couch with the rest of the wine. Mara curled into the corner, her feet tucked under her, looking more relaxed than Ethan had ever seen her. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "What do you see when you look at me?" The question surprised him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you could be with anyone, someone from your world, someone who understands that life, someone who wouldn't freak out about a $300 coat. So, what do you see in me? In us?" Ethan set down his wine glass and turned to face her fully. "I see someone who's stronger than I'll ever be, who works 2 jobs to provide for her daughter without ever complaining, who makes miracles happen with whatever she has, who loves so fiercely and completely that it terrifies me and inspires me in equal measure. Ethan, I see someone who makes me want to be better, who doesn't care about my money or my company or any of the things I thought defined me, who looks at me and sees just Ethan with all my flaws and failures and somehow thinks that's enough." Mara's eyes were bright with tears. "It is enough. You are enough. So are you. More than enough. You and Lucy, you're everything I didn't know I was looking for." They moved toward each other at the same time, meeting in the middle of the couch. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, both of them half afraid the other might pull away. But neither did. They kissed like people who'd been waiting for this, who'd taken their time getting here, who knew the weight of what they were building together. When they finally broke apart, Mara laughed softly. "We really did this backwards, didn't we? Most people kiss before they have their first fight about money. We're not most people." "No," she agreed. "We're really not." They spent the rest of the evening on that couch, talking and kissing and making plans. Careful plans, because they were both aware of what was at stake. Lucy would always come first for Mara and Nora for Ethan, and they needed to figure out how to merge their families without losing themselves in the process. Winter turned to spring. Ethan met Mara's ex-husband exactly once, when the man showed up drunk at her apartment demanding to see Lucy. Ethan happened to be there, and he'd stepped between the man and Mara's door with all the authority of someone who'd spent years commanding boardrooms. "You need to leave," Ethan said quietly. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm someone who cares about them, and you need to leave before I call the police." The man had looked at him with bleary eyes, seemed to recognize he was outmatched, and stumbled away. Mara had been shaking afterward, and Ethan had held her while she cried angry tears about the unfairness of it all. "He gave up his right to show up drunk and demanding," she said. "He doesn't get to do this." "Do you want to file a restraining order?" "I don't know. Maybe. I'm so tired of him having any power over us." "Then we'll take that power away, together." They did file the order. Ethan paid for the lawyer with Mara's permission, and they went to court together. The judge granted the order without much debate, and Mara walked out of that courthouse looking lighter than Ethan had ever seen her. Spring brought other changes, too. Nora finished her junior year with excellent grades and was officially accepted to the summer research program in San Diego. She video called Ethan, bursting with excitement, and when he said he was proud of her, she actually believed him. "Can I tell you something?" Nora said during one of their weekend visits. "Of course." "I'm glad you met Mara and Lucy. I know I was skeptical at first, but you're different now. You're more, present. And I think it's because of them." "They changed my life," Ethan admitted. "Good. You needed changing." Nora paused. "Dad, what are you going to do? Long term, I mean. Are you going to marry her?" The question shouldn't have surprised him, but it did. I don't know, we're taking it slow. You've been together for 6 months. That's not that slow. I want to do it right this time, not rush, not assume, not make the same mistakes I made with your mom. Mom rushed into things too. It wasn't all you. Nora studied him. But Dad, if you love her, and I think you do, you should tell her. Life's too short to wait for the perfect moment. That conversation stayed with Ethan. Did he love Mara? He thought about her constantly, wanted to talk to her about everything, felt physically lighter when she was around. When Lucy called him Mr. Ethan in that bright voice, his heart swelled 3 sizes. When Mara smiled at him across her kitchen table, he felt like he'd finally come home. Yes, he loved her. He loved both of them. The question was when to say it and how. Summer arrived, and with it, Lucy's 6th birthday. Mara had planned a small party at the park, just a few kids from school, some simple games, a grocery store cake. Ethan asked if he could do something special for Lucy, and after some negotiation, Mara agreed to let him rent a bounce house. Just a bounce house, she'd stipulated. No ponies, no princesses, no over-the-top billionaire nonsense. Just a bounce house, Ethan agreed. The party was chaotic and perfect. Kids screamed and ran and bounced until they were sweaty and exhausted. Lucy was in heaven, her face painted like a butterfly. Her new dress, bought by Mara, not Ethan, already stained with grass and frosting. Nora had flown in for the weekend, helping Mara organize games and wrangling 6-year-olds with surprising competence. As the party wound down and kids started getting picked up by their parents, Lucy ran over to where Ethan was cleaning up paper plates. Mr. Ethan, can I ask you something? Of course, birthday girl. Lucy looked uncharacteristically serious.
Are you going to be my daddy?
The question hit him like a physical blow. Ethan glanced over at Mara, who was helping another kid find their shoes, not aware of what her daughter was asking. What makes you ask that, Lucy? Because you do daddy things. You come to my school stuff and you read me stories and you fixed my nightlight when it broke. And you make Mama happy. Daddies are supposed to make mamas happy, right? Ethan crouched down to her level, his heart pounding. Yeah, they are. Lucy, I care about you and your mama very much, and I'm not going anywhere. But that's something your mama and I would need to talk about, okay? It's a big decision. Because you already have Nora? Nora is my daughter, yes, but that doesn't mean... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Lucy, families can be lots of different things, and whoever is in our family, you and your mama are very important to me. Does that make sense? Lucy thought about it, then nodded. Okay, but I think you'd be a good daddy. Better than my old one. She said it so matter-of-factly, without sadness or anger, just reporting a truth. Then she ran off to join Nora, leaving Ethan kneeling in the grass with his heart in his throat. That night, after Lucy was asleep and Nora had gone back to his penthouse, Ethan stayed to help Mara clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, washing dishes and putting away leftover cake, until finally Mara said, Lucy asked you something today. I saw her talking to you. She did. What did she ask? Ethan dried his hands on a dish towel. She asked if I was going to be her daddy. Mara froze. What did you say? I said it was something we'd need to talk about. Was that okay? Yeah, that was perfect. Mara sat down at her kitchen table, suddenly looking exhausted. She's been asking me the same thing, for weeks now. What do you tell her? That we're taking things one day at a time, that you're very special to us, that families come in all shapes and sizes. Mara looked up at him. She really loves you, you know. Both of you, you and Nora. She talks about Nora like she's the coolest person in the world. Nora feels the same way about Lucy. Ethan, where is this going? Us, I mean. Because we can't keep dancing around it forever. Lucy's asking questions and she deserves answers, so do I. This was it. The moment Nora had told him to stop waiting for, Ethan pulled out the chair across from Mara and sat down. I love you, he said. I'm in love with you. I love the way you're fierce and strong and refuse to let anyone diminish you. I love the way you love Lucy with your whole heart, without reservation. I love the way you make me want to be better. And I love Lucy.
I love her questions and her bright eyes and the way she believes the best in people even when they've let her down. I want to be part of your family, Mara, in whatever way you'll let me." Mara's eyes were wet. "That's a lot of love." "It is. And I know it's fast, and I know we said we'd go slow, but Nora's right. Life's too short to wait for perfect moments. This is my moment. Right here, sitting in your kitchen on your daughter's 6th birthday, telling you that I love you and I want to build a life with you." "I love you too," Mara said, and Ethan felt his heart stop and restart. "I've been scared to say it, scared to jinx it, but I do. I love you, and Lucy loves you, and I think—" She paused, wiping her eyes. "I think we could be really happy together, if you're sure. If you're really truly sure this is what you want." "I've never been more sure of anything. Even with all the complications?" "Because there will be complications, Ethan. My ex, the money difference, figuring out how to merge our families, dealing with people who'll judge us for how we met and how fast we moved. I don't care about any of that. I only care about you and Lucy and Nora, figuring out how to make this work for all of us." Mara stood up, walked around the table, and kissed him. It was different from their other kisses, deeper, more certain, a promise sealed with action. When they broke apart, she said, "Okay, let's do this. Let's be a family." "Yeah? Yeah." They spent the next hour making plans. Real plans this time, not just vague hopes. They agreed that Ethan would talk to Nora, make sure she was truly comfortable with this. Mara would talk to Lucy, explain that Mr. Ethan was going to be a more permanent part of their lives. They'd take it slow with the living arrangements. Maybe Ethan would keep his penthouse for now, but spend more nights at Mara's apartment. Or maybe they'd find a new place together, something that was theirs rather than his or hers. "What about work?" Mara asked. "Your company?" "Gerald can handle more than I give him credit for, and I'm realizing I don't need to be involved in every single decision. Maybe it's time to step back a little, focus on what actually matters." "You love your work. I love you more." 3 months later, they told Lucy together. She'd been remarkably patient, sensing something was changing but not pushing. They took her to the park, the same park where they'd had her birthday party, and sat her down on a bench between them. "Lucy, we want to talk to you about something," Mara started. "Are you getting married?" Lucy asked immediately. Mara and Ethan exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed marriage specifically, both of them gun-shy, after failed first attempts. But Ethan found he wasn't opposed to the idea, not with Mara. "Not yet," Ethan said. "But we do want to be a family. All of us. You, your mom, me, and Nora when she's here. Would that be okay with you?" Lucy's face split into the biggest smile Ethan had ever seen. "Really? Like a real family?" "Like a real family," Mara confirmed. "Does that mean you'll live with us?" "Eventually, yes. We're going to find a new place, all of us together, somewhere with enough room for everyone." "Can I have my own room? And can Nora have a room for when she visits?" "Absolutely." Lucy threw her arms around both of them, squealing with delight. "This is the best day ever. Better than my birthday. Better than Christmas. Can we get a dog too?" "Let's start with the house," Ethan said, laughing. "We'll work up to the dog." They found a house in early fall. Not in Ethan's neighborhood, too pretentious, too isolated, and not in Mara's. She deserved better than a building with a broken heater and noisy neighbors. They found something in between, in a neighborhood with good schools and tree-lined streets, a 4-bedroom house with a yard big enough for a dog someday, and a porch where they could sit on summer evenings. It wasn't a mansion. Ethan's penthouse had more square footage and better views. But it was a home. Their home. Nora came for the move-in, helping Lucy decorate her new room with posters and fairy lights. She'd started calling Mara by her first name, not Mrs. Collins, and Mara had started asking Nora's opinion on things, treating her like the almost adult she was becoming. The first dinner in their new house was chaos. Ethan had tried to cook and nearly set off the smoke alarm. Mara had taken over, laughing, while Lucy and Nora set the table wrong 3 times. They ate off paper plates because half their dishes were still packed, and the dining room table wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others. It was perfect. After dinner, Lucy asked Ethan to read her a bedtime story in her new room. He sat on the edge of her new bed in the room they'd painted pale pink at her request,
and read about a bear who learned to be brave. "Mr. Ethan?" Lucy said sleepily when he finished. "Yeah, sweetheart? Can I call you Dad?" Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. "I would love that, but only if you're comfortable with it."
I'm comfortable. You're my dad now, and Nora's my sister, and Mama's your, what's the word? Partner? Girlfriend? Love of my life. Lucy giggled. "That's lots of words." "She's worth lots of words." "I love you, Dad." It was the first time she'd said it with that word. Dad. Not Mr. Ethan. Dad. "I love you too, Lucy. So much." He stayed until she fell asleep, then found Mara in their bedroom. Their bedroom, still a strange and wonderful concept, unpacking boxes. "She called me Dad," he said. Mara turned, smiling. "I heard. How do you feel about that?" "Terrified, honored, completely inadequate, ready to spend the rest of my life earning the title." "You've already earned it, Ethan. You earned it the moment you showed up and stayed." They stood in their new bedroom, in their new house, in their new life, and Ethan marveled at the journey that had brought them here. A year ago, he'd been sitting alone in a diner on Christmas Eve, drowning in loneliness, convinced he'd lost his chance at happiness. And then he'd looked up and seen a woman counting coins with her daughter, and everything had changed. Not overnight, not easily, but completely. "Marry me," Ethan said suddenly. Mara's eyes widened. "What?" "Marry me. I know it's fast, and I know we said we'd take our time, but I don't want to wait. I want to make this official. I want Lucy to be my daughter legally. I want you to be my wife. I want to build this life with you, all the way, no holding back." "Ethan, you don't have to answer now. Think about it. But I need you to know that I'm all in. Completely, totally, irrevocably in." Mara was crying, but she was smiling too. "You don't have a ring?" "I'll get one. Whatever you want, or we can pick it out together. Or we can skip the ring entirely if that's what you prefer. I don't care about any of that. I just care about you." "Yes?" Mara said. "Yes, you'll think about it?" "Yes, I'll marry you." Ethan crossed the room in 2 strides and kissed her, lifting her off the ground, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. "Really?" he said when they broke apart. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. You showed up, Ethan. You stayed. You chose us every single day, even when it was hard, even when I pushed you away. That's all I ever wanted, someone who would stay. I'm staying forever, if you'll have me." Forever sounds perfect. They got married 3 months later. Not a big wedding. Neither of them wanted that. Just a small ceremony at the house, with Nora as Ethan's best woman and Lucy as Mara's flower girl. Mrs. Chen officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. Catherine came, bringing Nora, and told Ethan privately that she was happy for him, that he seemed like the man she'd married all those years ago before life had gotten in the way. Gerald gave a toast that was surprisingly heartfelt, saying that in all his years working for Ethan Brooks, he'd never seen him as happy as he was right now, in this moment, with these people. The wedding itself was simple. Ethan wore a suit, but not one of his usual ones, something softer, more comfortable. Mara wore a dress she'd picked out with Nora's help, nothing extravagant, just beautiful. Lucy wore a princess dress and carried her rabbits down the aisle because she refused to leave them behind. When the moment came for vows, Ethan took Mara's hands and said, "A year ago, I was lost. I had everything money could buy and nothing that mattered. And then I met you, and you showed me what I'd been missing. You taught me that showing up is more important than succeeding, that love isn't something you earn, but something you choose every day, over and over. I choose you, Mara. Today, tomorrow, forever. I choose you and Lucy and this beautiful, chaotic life we're building together." Mara's vows were simpler. You stayed. When everyone else left, you stayed. And that's all I ever needed. I love you, Ethan. I choose you too. They kissed as husband and wife, and Lucy cheered so loudly that everyone laughed, and Nora wiped away tears she pretended not to have, and Mrs. Chen declared them officially a family. The reception was in their backyard, catered by the diner where they'd met because Mara had insisted. They danced to music from a Bluetooth speaker,
ate cake that Lucy had helped decorate, and celebrated into the evening as the sun set over their neighborhood. At one point, Ethan found himself standing on the porch with Nora, watching Mara teach Lucy and some of the neighborhood kids a complicated dance. "You did good, Dad," Nora said. "Yeah?" "Yeah. She's perfect for you. They both are." "I got lucky." "No," Nora corrected. "You were brave. You were lonely and lost. And instead of staying that way, you took a chance. That's not luck. That's courage." Ethan put his arm around his daughter. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher. Eventually." They stood there together, watching the family they'd chosen. Not perfect, not traditional, but theirs. Mara looked up and caught Ethan's eye, smiling that smile that still made his heart race. She beckoned him over, and he went, leaving Nora on the porch, joining his wife and daughter, and this life they were building together. 1 year later, they stood in the same backyard decorating a Christmas tree. A real tree this time, not one made from coat hangers and yarn. Lucy was 7 now, confident and bright, calling Ethan Dad without hesitation. Nora was visiting for winter break from UC San Diego, where she was thriving in her marine biology program. She'd brought her girlfriend, Maya, to meet the family, and Lucy was already planning their wedding even though Nora kept insisting they'd only been dating 3 months. Mara was pregnant. 3 months along with a baby they hadn't been planning but both wanted desperately. A child who would grow up knowing both their worlds, who would have siblings and parents and a family that chose each other every single day. As they hung ornaments and strung lights, Ethan thought about that Christmas Eve 2 years ago. The loneliness that had driven him to a random diner. The moment he'd looked up and seen a woman counting coins. The small choices that had led to this moment. A house full of laughter, a family full of love, a life that finally felt like living. "What are you thinking about?" Mara asked, coming to stand beside him. "About how one night changed everything." "It wasn't one night," Mara said softly. "It was every day after, when you kept showing up. That's what changed everything." She was right. It hadn't been magic or fate or divine intervention. It had been choice, the choice to stay, the choice to try. The choice to believe that 2 broken people could help each other heal, that 2 different worlds could merge, that love could be enough. Lucy ran over, grabbing both their hands. "Dad, Mom, come see the angel. Nora put it on top, but it's crooked." "It's not crooked," Nora protested. "It's artistic." They all went to examine the tree. Ethan, Mara, Lucy, Nora, and Maya, who'd been absorbed into the family with the ease of someone who was meant to be there. The angel was definitely crooked, but that was okay. Everything about their family was a little crooked, a little unconventional, a little imperfect, and that's what made it perfect. As they stood there together, admiring their lopsided tree in their comfortable home surrounded by the people they loved, Ethan sent up a silent thank you to the universe or luck or whatever force had led him to that diner 2 years ago, had led him to Mara and Lucy, had given him a second chance to be the father he should have been, the husband he wanted to be, the man he was learning to become. Outside, snow began to fall. The first snow of the season, blanketing Chicago in white, making everything new again. And inside, in a house that had been empty but was now full, a family celebrated. Not because it was Christmas, though it was. Not because they had everything, though they had enough. But because they had each other, and they had chosen each other, and that choice, renewed every day in 1,000 small ways, was the greatest gift of all. Ethan Brooks had been a billionaire who'd lost everything that mattered. Mara Collins had been a struggling mother who'd been abandoned by everyone she'd trusted. Lucy had been a little girl who'd learned too young that promises got broken. But together, they'd built something new, something real, something worth every risk, every fear, every moment of doubt. They'd built a family, not by accident, not by luck, but by choice. And that made all the difference.